You're tuned in to Horror Slop, where the stories are rotting, truth is twisted, and sleep, forget about it.
Yeah, welcome to the pit. It's gross, it's creepy, and honestly, it's kind of my vibe. Hope you like nightmares, because tonight's tale, it slithers.
Straight from the darkest corners of Reddit. Real stories, real fear, and just enough blood to stain your soul.
So at least grab your bed sheets, so grab a flashlight, and maybe a therapist.
This is Horror Slop. Every night starts somewhere, and this is where yours begins. First story, first chill. Let's see if you make it to the end.
Their names were Addison and Andrew. Addison loved playing with her dolls, playing dress-up, and playing pretend. Andrew loved playing sports, being with his friends, and playing with his action figures. They were adorable 6-year-olds. Of course, they have never seen me before. I made sure I was hidden well. But I've always watched over them with a proud smile on my face. It always broke my heart whenever one of them cried because of their fear of the dark. I always wished I could go up to them and comfort them when they are upset, but I couldn't let them see me. But then their mother passed away. She was in a car crash. It wasn't even her fault. It was the other driver's fault. He was drunk driving and was going way over the speed limit. I learned how to use technology so I can get help just in case anything goes wrong. But as technology advanced, it started to become harder to keep up with it. Today, Addison and Andrew are both 10 years old and I am very proud of them both. They both have separate rooms, making it a little harder to watch over them both at the same time, but I try. But lately, strange things have been going on around here. I looked down at myself, and noticed that I was covered in red liquid too. I noticed my teeth was covered in it too. The police questioned Andrew, Addison, their dad, and the mothers on their disappearances. It felt like the police were there for hours. Eventually, they left, and the people who clean up crime scenes came in and got the red liquid out of the carpet. I didn't think that it was necessary to bring in the crime scene cleaners to clean up the stain, since it was probably just some red juice. But I didn't say anything. Over the next few days, their dad started drinking more and more. One day, he got incredibly drunk. He was walking around the kitchen, screaming at Addison and Andrew. Once again, I felt rage come throughout my body. How dare he yell at his kids? But I tried to stay calm. Maybe he was just angry about something at work. Where was he? I just wanted to go up to the twins and comfort them. They called the police. While waiting for the police to come, I started to notice that they were starting to get scared of shadows. They jumped when they saw any kind of shadow, and they made sure to stay as far away from closets as possible. I was confused. What happened that made them so afraid of shadows and closets? They were never scared of those things before. The police eventually arrived, and the twins were led out of the house by some sort of lady. I got into my shadow form and followed them. When they noticed their own shadows, they screamed in terror for a second. I was heartbroken at how terrified they were. So I have a question. Why are the twins suddenly so scared of shadows and closets? What's the red liquid I keep seeing whenever someone goes missing? Why are people scared of monsters? Part 6.
Still here? Aw, look at you. Brave little meatbag. Too late to back down now. Next story's already watching.
Love 1. Love 2. Sorry for bothering you. He had a messy beard and a weathered face that made him appear much older than he probably was. 5 minutes. I repeated, trying not to sound too surprised. That was unusually frequent, even for a patient with severe OCD. Do you feel any relief after the ritual is complete? Fear of death or murder was one of the most common manifestations of OCD. But of course, I didn't want to minimize his fear, which was still very real to him. He swallowed. If I miss a ritual, he comes in the middle of the night. And he never leaves the house, she said quietly. This is the first time he's been out in 3 years. He's been on disability the whole time. He's so terrified. And my new assistant, Noah, opened the door. I shook my head and apologized. I stepped out and took the call. The school wanted me to testify in Emma's favor, which I was already planning to do. I got the sense they were more worried I would try to blame the school, as revenge for firing me. I'm so sorry for the interruption, I said as I took my seat. Now, there's good news and bad news here. The bad news is that you certainly seem to be suffering from a severe case of obsessive-compulsive disorder. The good news is that you came in for help, and OCD is very treatable. Phil shook his head. No. No, I can't take medications. I can't stop the rituals. She winced and shook her head slightly. And closed her eyes and lifted up her shirt. Her torso was covered in at least a dozen stab wounds. Jesus Christ. Had it already been 5 minutes? Sorry for bothering you.
Whew, telling gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
I Kidnapped a Child and I Have No Regrets, by Vertet GD. Clear blue sky, a gentle breeze blowing through the suburbs, the smell of freshly cut grass and a confused little girl staring up at me, sitting in her own little corner far, far away from the other children. Mousy little thing with long blonde hair in a ponytail, wearing a plain white shirt with some logo, pink skirt and blue pants underneath. She looked just as anxious as I was feeling. Mumamisa can't talk to strangers. She turned her head slightly. Really? Michelle Bain, tall, messy brown hair, big nose, baggy eyes. So what's your name? But, my teacher. It's right around the corner. We'll be back in 5 minutes. I held her hand in mine as we made our way to the mall right next to the school. The ice cream man handed us both soft serve with sprinkles, her favorite. She mumbled thank you. He laughed and complimented me for raising such a polite young girl. We finished our ice cream sitting outside and I even got to wipe her nose off, all white and sprinkled. She giggled really hard at that. Instead of heading back, I took us to the toy store across the ice cream place. Don't worry about it, okay? Oh, okay. Just as we were heading back to school through the parking lot, a woman in the distance spotted us and sprinted our way. Middle-aged woman, brown pixie cut, glasses, kind of cute. Far out in the distance I could see smoke rising. Emily, where were you? We were looking all over for you. I'm sorry, I interjected, I took her out for some ice cream. It's quite strange, really. A freak incident in our little town. Faulty wiring, huge fire, single mother, knocked out cold and perished. No other family in the picture. Such a shame. But Emily recognized me when I came to visit her at the police station and I had a clean sheet and a stable income, so soon she was mine for the grabbing. Yet I can't sleep. I entered her bedroom and sat right next to her. Sound asleep.
Still with us? Good. That last one was just the warm-up. Let's go deeper.
The fourth victim was Kelly Soprano. She worked the ticket booth at the subway station. I saw her every day she worked after school. Pretty little thing, her brunette hair was amazing, her smile always brightened me up when I had my darkest days, and she always was down to talk whenever. I wished I never touched her. Looking back, she was the victim I regret killing the most. She was just at the wrong place at the wrong time. Her picture is her with the dog filter on her face, and she's wearing her Metro uniform. The fifth and most recent victim was Todd Lebowski. He was this wannabe YouTuber, performing stupid stunts to get views. I watched his videos after the killing and he seemed like an entitled D-bag. His last stunt was the worst one he could have think of. He was getting my attention, trying to piss me off. Well, he got what he wanted, to piss me off. His body was the worst out of all of them, they couldn't even recognize who he was, they had to go off dental records to see who he was. Somehow the camera was intaked so they looked at the footage. What they saw was me, trying to tell him to get off the track before I ran him over with the subway car. After every death, everyone tell me it's not your fault, but I can't help just remembering them in their last moments. I starting to feel better when I took pictures of them and hang them in the subway cars I drive for the day. I went to everyone's funeral, to make sure they had someone to remember them. Emily had to go into prostitution, became a heavy user of drugs. Roger became affiliated with loan sharks and made a hole too big to come out of. Victoria lost everything, her kids went out of state, her husband was a gay man the whole time, the cherry on top was she found out she had skin cancer and she had months to live. Kelly was a victim of bullying. Her note said she loved everyone that made her smile, she even mentioned me. Todd seemed like a stunt gone wrong, but actually he was battling depression and his stunts were his way of trying to end it all. To the people who are battling depression or are going through a rough spot in their life, just know that someone will remember you fondly, even if it's the guy who sees you in your final seconds.
Alright, quick break before our next story. Let's check in with our resident spooky dude. Hey, you ever smile, or is your face just stuck that way?
I smiled once. The sky bled. A child vanished. Never again.
Okay, drama. Maybe next time just try a dad joke.
Knock knock. They never made it to the door.
Wow. Fine, stay moody. Anyways, back to the darkness. This next one's got teeth.
My name is Lily Madwhip and this is The Worst Day Ever, by Lillian Madwhip. My name is Lily Madwhip and... Ugh. My chest really hurts. I just need a moment, just need to sit down by this tree. I wasn't feeling so bad after the car crash I caused just a bit ago, but the seatbelt really did dig in, and I'm not used to all this running. Have I still got Pachar on me? Yes. Good. He's telling me to rest here. Just relax and let the police deal with Felix. Don't go after him. I can't rest here, there might be ants. I don't want ants crawling all over me if I fall asleep under this tree. Besides, I've got a better chance of stopping Felix, because all I have to do is get near him and tell him to buzz off and never return or something. I hope that works. Where even am I? What house number is this? 64. There are way too many houses on this street. I'll die. I feel it. I know he's right. Pachar is always right. But if I know it, maybe I can change it. I don't have to die. I don't want to die either, geez. There's nobody better at not dying than me. Who else can see death coming? Nobody. Even the lady in black who works with the angel of death can't see it coming like I can. I just gotta be focused when I get there, stop Felix, help Meredith, and... No. I've got to get up. I've got to get to 86 Rosemont, the greenhouse with the white window frames that I can still see in my head, but it's getting darker, like the memory is fading. I get to my feet, check my shoelaces because I don't want to trip over them when I'm saving the day and have that be the way I die, then start to run down the sidewalk again. Felix is nowhere in sight. There's sirens back behind me, probably pulling up to where I made Felix crash my dad's car. I wonder where my dad is. If Felix had his car, and Felix answered our phone at home, he must have done something to my dad. I don't want my dad to be dead. He was going to teach me to play the drums like Roger. And the harmonica, though I'm less interested in that. Don't be dead, Dad. There's the greenhouse ahead. I recognize the mailbox. A black car is parked in the driveway. It probably belongs to one of Meredith's foster parents. Or both. Maybe they have only one car. Not every family has a car for each adult after all. Then again, maybe they didn't go straight home after whoever picked Meredith up from school. If I got suspended for turning another student's backpack into a fireball, I'm sure my dad would take me straight home, but maybe Meredith's foster family would take her to see a doctor or return her to the orphanage or something because they think she's defective. Poor Meredith, she's not defective, she's just special. And maybe she's just in the house like I originally assumed, getting grounded for nearly burning Lisa Welch into a cinder. "Hello," she says with a smile. It doesn't look phony. I can tell phony adult smiles. They can curl their mouth up but they can't change how they're really feeling in their eyes. Phony smiles are like when someone points a camera at you and tells you to smile and say cheese but you're trying to hold in a fart. You must be Lily. "Would you please call the police, ma'am?" I ask as politely and calmly as I can. I'm about ready to double over in pain. There's a weasel-faced man coming to hurt Meredith. "Please." She steps aside and gestures to a set of stairs. This house is really nice inside. They've got carpeting all over and unlike the carpeting in my house it looks like they vacuum it regularly. Ours looks like someone regularly spills coffee on it. Probably because someone regularly spills coffee on it. You go see Mary and sit down. I'll get on the phone, okay? Would you like something to drink? There's 5 rooms on the second floor. Meredith's is probably the one that's on fire. Only none of them are on fire. I don't smell smoke either. That's good. I gotta be careful though, because when I'm this close, if she's angry, she might burn the whole house down not realizing I'm in it with her. She pokes her head out of the room at the end of the hall. "Lily?" Her bedroom has wood paneling. At least I hope it's just paneling. Maybe there's brick underneath. That'd be safe. Bricks don't catch fire, do they? I hope it isn't something shoddy underneath, or super flammable. Pachar says it's plaster underneath the fake paneling. He's such a help. I don't see myself getting burned to death, so I'm trusting my ability to see things before they happen to warn me. I've got to be very careful. I still have that feeling I'm gonna die, and I need to be ready to react if the moment comes. Meredith's bed looks really comfy. She's got 3 big pillows to lay her head on. I could probably fall asleep on them but my brain is racing. And it hurts lying down. Worse than standing up, actually. Let's not lie down. No, sitting isn't any good either, it's so soft that I feel like I'm putting pressure on my chest all hunched over. I'm going to kneel here beside the bed. Okay, that works. GUH. No, it's a man with a weasel face. His name is Felix. And this was a different car accident. I just made him crash, down the street. He's coming for you. And I think I'm dying. Why is he coming for me? Your foster mother. She's fine. She's taking a nap. I'm not here for her. He steps into the room, dragging one of his feet. There's blood coming off him from somewhere and he's leaving a trail on the floor. I hope it's his blood and not Mrs. Lake, who I assume is the nice lady who answered the door. It looks like there's something in Felix's other hand. Oh God, it's probably a knife or something. Mr. Felix, I say, straightening up, you're going to drop what you've got and walk out of here. Yes. Yes you are. Really? Now. It's not working now. What gives? Did she tell you, Meredith? Blood runs down over his eye. So gross. Can we pause this showdown and you go wash yourself up, please? We can take turns if you promise not to kill Meredith while I'm trying to fix whatever's digging into my side. In fact, let's both call this whole thing off and go get checked at the hospital. What a good friend she is, keeping secrets from you. That's right, Meredith, burn me. Like you burned my boy, Joey. Remember him? Remember the carnival? He moves closer. We step back. We're running out of space in the bedroom. It's a big bedroom too. I wish my bedroom was this big. And that I had a turtle. And that I wasn't here, dying from internal injuries or something, and dealing with a crazy man. Mr. Felix, you're going to jump out the window. I yell. So then why do you want to kill her? I say angrily. There's just enough strength in my legs to step between Felix and Meredith, so I do it. Lily Madwhip, human shield. This is where I die, right Pachar? Oh, he's over on the bed. And he's gone quiet. Stupid angel. When did I ever say I was going to kill her? He shakes his head again, this time with amusement, but there's blood running down his face so it's kind of hard to see the funny in all this. I'm confused at this point. You said. Meredith looks at me with her good eye. Tell me what? Felix is smiling. When someone like you and someone like me are together, our gifts become amplified. Your gift of fire, her gift of seeing the future, my gift of knowing people's secrets. Right now, you can make fire without touching anything. She can cause things to happen just by saying it. And me, well. I make people finally tell the truth. Except I can't seem to make things happen because I just tried twice to make Felix do something and he laughed in my face. Maybe I've lost my ability because of this pain I'm feeling. What do you mean? Meredith asks. He turns to me. What scares you, Lily? What? That's a weird thing to ask. And yet, I feel an overwhelming need to tell them both. I can't control my mouth or my brain. Sharks. I yell. Sharks are terrifying. They've got multiple rows of teeth. It's like God said, I'm tired of people going swimming in my oceans and bothering all the fish, so I'm going to make one fish that's huge and has a zillion teeth and crazy eyes and all it does is eat you. Thanks, God. Thanks for sharks. Clowns, I admit. I don't understand why anyone thought up clowns. They are pure nightmare fuel. Felix is frowning at me. I guess those weren't the answers he was looking for because he clenches his free hand up into a fist and looks about ready to hit me with it. No. You're afraid that your parents think you're some sort of freak, and that they don't love you. Oh yeah. Yeah, that's pretty true. After all, if I didn't exist, they'd probably still have Roger. And Dad loved Roger. Mom did too, but not like Dad did. Sometimes I think they both love me, but the things I say scare them. I don't want them to think I'm a freak. Why don't you tell your best friend what you think of her, Lily? Felix grits his teeth with a smile. That's that phony smile I was talking about right there. Or maybe he's in pain like I am, after all his face looks pretty messed up. You scare the bejesus out of me. I say. Oh no. Okay, that I didn't want to say. Meredith is my friend, and it's true she scares me, but I would never tell her that because she's my friend. And because it might piss her off and then cause her to burn me alive like she did to Felix's son Joey and her own parents. Meredith looks at me and I can see she's hurt by what I admitted. Her lip is quivering, which is typically the sign that someone's about to cry. I take her hands and squeeze them and stare at her, maybe a bit too much, better blink so I don't freak her out. You scare me, but you're my best friend. After Jamal. And Pachar, really. You're my third best friend. And I was just in a car accident for you. But your fire powers are terrifying. I'm sorry. The temperature in the room is getting toasty. I think I can see the air waving like when you're outside in the summer and can see the heat rising off the street. Is this Meredith? Is she doing this? Why can't I make Felix leave? Meredith stiffens. I squeeze her hands again to try to calm her. I don't know if things get even stronger with three of us in the same place, and if that's what's causing the whole room to heat up. All I know is I need to calm her down, and get Felix away from us. And go to the hospital, because something inside me is sending a really bad stabby stab down my side. It wasn't an accident, she finally blurts out. Felix steps forward and puts a hand on her shoulder. She tenses at his touch, but then seems to relax. I can't look at either of them, I don't know what to do anymore. The heat in the room is making me sweat and I want to cough, but I'm afraid coughing will make the pain in my side flare up. They deserved what they got, dear, he says in a creepy, comforting tone. Besides, you're leaving out the best part. I don't know what you're talking about. Sure you do. The best part was, deep down, you liked burning them. I finally do look at the two of them. Felix has an arm around Meredith, and she's hanging her head ashamed, but nodding at the same time. I did like it, she whispers. Her voice is eerily calm, like she just admitted that she likes boy bands, not that she liked murdering her parents. Oh my God, Pachar, tell me this isn't happening. He tells me that it is. Nathaniel told us that she burned them. Why would I assume otherwise? Why can't I stop this? I ask him, why can't I make Felix leave? Okay, great, I don't really know what that means, and I don't exactly have time to look it up because I'm probably dying here. Felix takes Meredith by the hand and starts to walk her away from me. Come with me, dear. Evil, he acts offended, putting a hand on his chest like she stabbed him in the heart. I'm not evil. I want to help you learn to control your gift to help other people, to hurt the people who deserve it. Your foster family isn't going to understand any better than your real family did. And you owe me. A life for a life. You took my son away from me. It's only right that you take his place. I told you I know all her secrets, he sneers at me. From downstairs comes the sound of the front door crashing open. They probably didn't need to kick it in, I don't think it was locked. Just try the knob. I always try the knob. Pachar says it was locked. Well, okay, what do I know? I'm just curled up here in a ball waiting to die. Is it now? No, still alive. I've never felt this much pain before though. Even when we got T-boned back 3 months ago and Roger died, I got something called whiplash that has nothing to do with actual whips, and it wasn't this bad. I take one last look up at Felix and Meredith. They're holding hands and moving toward the window. She has one of those latched windows you can open easily. The ones in my room you gotta get an adult to pull these little tabs on the side to slide them up. I wonder if I can get my parents to get me windows like the ones Meredith has. Or had, I guess. Assuming I live. Where was I? Oh yeah, Meredith and Felix, stepping past me to the window, silent as mice, while the sound of someone approaching from the stairs is getting dimmer and softer. Felix has a look of confusion on his face, and is saying something to Meredith, but I can't hear him. She's looking over her shoulder back at me and is mouthing something too. This is the worst day ever.
You're still tuned to Horror Slop. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
When I was a kid, I was obsessed with milk. We all had that phase, right? Where there was a food or drink we just couldn't get enough of and wanted it morning, noon, and night. That was me with milk. I could drink it by the gallon. My parents didn't mind, they would rather I wanted something healthy like that to quench my thirst than be constantly after soda or one of those concentrate drinks full of sugar that you had to add water to. I could make myself sick sometimes, drinking too much, too fast. But didn't every kid? Hell, even adults can have too much of a good thing and make themselves ill for it. It was never enough to put me off though, no amount of aching bellies could separate me from my beloved milk. Nothing could. Or so I thought. I tried to brush it off as just the ancient stairs airing their complaints after I'd trampled up them, but there was something so off about it. In my 16 years of living in that house I'd never heard anything like it. I figured it might have been a wild animal, maybe a raccoon or a possum that had somehow got in during the day. Being a typical teen, that was not something I wanted to deal with late at night, so I simply locked the basement door to prevent it getting up into the main house and went to bed. That night, the noise returned. This time I was sure it wasn't simply random creaking, because it started up at the exact same time right before I headed up to my room for the night. The only difference was I hadn't been down to the basement yet, so it definitely was not the result of me stepping on some well-worn floorboards. Being the not particularly brave teen I was, I bolted out of the house and across to my grandparents. Fortunately they were still awake and my grandfather was a bull of a man not to be messed with. He marched over with his shotgun to investigate, only to come back a half hour later claiming he couldn't find anything or anyone. He reasoned, like me, that it was maybe a raccoon and was hiding in a nook or cranny somewhere down there, and had locked the place up to stop it getting out much as I had done the previous night. I stayed at my grandparents' from that point on, going back into the house during the day to take care of any chores and play on my Nintendo for a couple of hours. I didn't go back down into the basement, opting to eat and drink at my grandparents' home too. About a week before my parents got back there was a summer storm that caused a power outage. It lasted a couple of days but gave me all the more reason to spend the remaining time my parents were away at my grandparents'. When I returned one morning to open up the curtains I noticed a foul smell spreading throughout the house. Knowing the power had been out I assumed the heavy, pungent odor was coming from the food in the fridge and freezer that had begun to go bad. The thought of dealing with it was unpleasant but it wasn't something I wanted my parents to come home to. I didn't want to deal with the cleanup and my grandparents would be out of town for the night visiting my great-uncle and I didn't much fancy having to clear out rotting food alone. That night was particularly hot, even for summer, and so I ended up turning the AC on. The cool air spreading through the house was a relief as I went to sleep, but it was soon a decision I was regretting. I woke up at around 4 in the morning to find the air of the house thick and muggy. It was worse than when I had gone to bed. Worse still, was the stench so strong I could taste it in my mouth. It was sweet and sour all at the same time, mixed with the sulfuric smell of rotting eggs and something my adolescent brain could only describe as someone having missed the toilet. I thought about a time when I was younger, when my dad had accidentally unplugged the fridge and none of us had noticed until the milk had gone off. I could remember that smell as I gagged and hurried into the upstairs bathroom, kneeling before the toilet as my stomach threatened to empty itself. It was sweet and bitter like this smell, with something acidic I've never known how to explain, and I could remember the thick, chunky sludge the milk had become. None of this helped me as the scent that filled the house seemed to flood into every pore of my body. I could smell it on my clothes, it was so strong my eyes watered and with one final, heavy flip, my stomach heaved and I vomited. How could the smell have gotten so bad in just a few hours? When they arrived in the morning, I explained the situation to them. Neither were pleased I hadn't taken care of the rotting food the day before, but agreed to help before it could get any worse. Worse would be an understatement for the odor that smacked us in the face. My grandmother couldn't even make it into the house. She was an ashen white and bent over the table on the porch, gagging. Even my grandfather lost his hardened composure upon setting foot into the house, having brought a tissue out of his pocket to cover his nose and mouth. I can only describe walking into that kitchen as having your face millimeters from an oven door when it's opened and the wave of heat knocks you off your feet. It was that, but only the smell. I could hear my grandfather retching and coughing as he descended the stairs, and I myself was soon doing the same as I made my way to the basement door with tears forming in my eyes. I wish I had listened to my grandfather when he told me to stay with my grandma. They were from a human. What I do know is from that day on, I couldn't drink milk. The smell of even fresh milk would bring the reek of death back to me, like it had just been trapped and waiting somewhere at the back of my nose. The sight of it reminded me of those fluids seeping down our basement walls.
Sleeping yet? Didn't think so. Next story's up. And yeah, it's worse. You're welcome.
Date a Dead Woman for Only $89.99 by polonium poisoning. How did I end up on this site? I don't even know. I woke up one day after a bad hangover of drinking cheap wine alone at home, and it was open on my computer. There was an address and a few vague compliments from so-called former clients. Why am I falling for this bullshit, you ask? And I'm bored. I'm bored with my life. I want to do something out of the ordinary. That's how every shitstorm starts, isn't it? Hi, I'm Shonda, she pointed at the cheap golden name tag. What's your name, dear? It's Farah. Yes, if that's alright, I said, insecure. She talked about disrupting the souls of the dead like it was a mere office business. But it was interesting. It was worth it. After paying, I filled a few forms in a tablet. They didn't ask for personal info such as full name or legal documents, just your preferences to make sure you're getting a good match. It was pretty much a personality test. I finished in around 15 minutes, and Shonda said, "Great," with a big smile and asked me to wait, then typed furiously. The summoning would take 10 minutes. After the appointed time, a girl came from a back door. She was in the middle 20s like me and pretty cute, with shoulder-length brown hair and big, shiny eyes. We were still in time for a late lunch, so I took Lisa to a place I liked. She asked a lot about me, but I'm pretty boring, so I'll spare you the details. What do you mean properly eat? I asked. What's the afterlife like? You can't eat? How, it's not real? If I can ask that, of course. We talked about a lot of things. She was very nice and, like myself, a Dickens fan. I think that we really connected, and when we shared a dessert by the end of the meal, it felt like I knew Lisa for at least a few weeks. It was hard to guess when she died, because she knew a lot about current subjects. I had to ask how. She smiled. Summons Incorporated helps us keep up with everything that is happening, so we can connect better with the living. I can even sing a little bit of a Frank Ocean song, you know. I laughed. I hope they pay you well for that. You don't need money in the afterlife, Farah. You need knowledge to create things with your mind, that's all. But they pay me the best thing that I could ask for, being back sometimes. It's good to see the world changing firsthand, and it's nice to meet new people. Afterlife is not bad, but it can get lonely. And sometimes every day is the same. Ha, no, dear. I had no time to be bored back then, she simply answered, then grabbed my hand. "You're really sweet." Everything went smoothly from then on. I told Lisa about my exes, she told me a little about her friends on the other side, and how it was preparation to get a living date. For example, you can't learn a language you don't know already, unless you study it for a proper time in the afterlife. It can take as much as you take on earth, but it usually takes less, because you don't have to waste time taking care of your bodily needs. Lisa learned Italian after she died. Oh, no. The matching process don't depend only on the forms, it's something somewhat supernatural. A bad man would be assigned some lady demon that would fuck his ass. The method is perfect, as far as I know. Well, it seems to be, I said, gently placing a kiss on her lips. She reciprocated. Sex was great, and we cuddled and ordered pizza afterwards. I'd say it was a normal date, except it was so much better than my normal dates. She's even-tempered, easy to please, and had the softest skin. That's literally everything I ask for in a woman. I started to make the calculations of how much I would need to summon her every weekend. It would be the most solid relationship I ever had. Maybe if I took a few extra hours of work during the week I could make it. A distant siren sounded in my head, I didn't know why. But I ignored it, and assured her it was amazing. She explained she signed up for dating girls after repeatedly being requested by the same guy. The first time was fine, but she was getting bored of not meeting new people. "I'm gonna miss you, Lisa. Can I request you again?" "Yes. It makes summoning easier and cheaper. They got it from my grave. You could visit it someday. I barely get visits lately." She sounded a little bit sad. "Of course. I would love to," I said. Then she told me her full name and the city she was buried in. It was nearby. "Well, Farah, it's time." She kissed my nose. "I had a great time with you, thank you so much. If you see my daughter, please tell her to visit more." Was I in love with a dead girl? Deciding to seize the time I still had that day, I started searching for her. It was easy to find the cemetery, so I drove myself there. After looking for a while, I finally found a beautiful white marble grave. Lisa had been beloved in life. Next to it, sat a familiar figure with a posy of yellow roses. The sound of my footsteps might have startled her, and she abruptly turned in my direction, then her face relaxed in a smile. She had been crying. Grandmama was now openly crying, clearly touched.
Something's still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
My sister's name was Angeline. I wanted to like her. I wanted to dote the way my friends fussed over their baby siblings. I wanted to feel that affectionate, protective rush. Sometimes, I'd get up at night and sneak into her room. Then, praying to God all the while to make me care, to make me a good brother, I'd stare at her in her crib, sometimes for hours, willing myself to love her. I guess that's the wrong way to put it. Imaginary friends don't come along. They bloom inside the mind and sometime after, wither and die there. "No," she'd snap. "I want to stay in here and play with May." After several days of this, I began to wonder if Angie was testing me. If she'd figured out I had a hollow, unfeeling core and was trying to determine its depths. The thought scared me so much that one day, I finally asked, "Can I come in and play with you and May?" Dim relief chased the panic in circles. Maybe she knew I didn't love her. But maybe she had no idea, and was simply outgrowing me. Yes. I allowed myself to savor the thought. It was quietly glorious, the emotional equivalent of the golden autumn sunlight streaming through the oak trees outside my window. It was fine, really, until she stopped sleeping. That might be an exaggeration, but it sure didn't feel like it. Our bedrooms shared a wall, good, thin, American plywood coated with the least amount of insulation possible, so I heard everything. I woke at all hours to her mad giggling and frantic whispering and jubilant scampering. The ensuing silence was more than silence. It was an absence, a fundamental darkening of the entire home. After a while, I began to drift. Somewhere in that twilight, I heard a voice. Low and raspy, like gravel and dead leaves and the distant roar of the ocean. I feel his heart, darling. He doesn't love you. He doesn't love anyone. I alone am your friend. I alone love you. My drifting stopped and somehow reversed, propelling me to full, stunned consciousness. I lay there, trying to understand what I was hearing. You're wrong, Angie wept. Not underground. Below. And you can come up any time, to play with all the other children. I will care for you, I will feed you, I will listen and play, and I will love you. Any park. All the parks. West Park is my favorite. As soon as we can. I shot out of bed without thinking and ran into her room. Angie, I breathed. Angie, come here. The monster reached for her, flickering hands changing form and shape so quickly I could barely comprehend. Stretching, growing, into pale claws the length and width of pillows. I darted forward, grabbed Angie by the shoulders, and shoved her out the door. The room began to quake, and an awful, itching sensation spread over my skin. Like static electricity, like swarming bugs, it enveloped me and for a terrible moment, I couldn't breathe. Angie released a choked sob and ran to the window, staring hopelessly at the hypnotically starry sky. No, she whispered. May. Come back. Come back. May did not come back. She hissed and spat and pushed me out of her room, then shut her door. I heard the dull click of the lock, and the muffled wheeze as she began to sob. Only when the first golden mist of dawn bled into the hall did I return to my room. Angie was despondent, dull and wet-eyed for days. But one night I woke to the joyful hiss of her voice, "You're back. You came back. Oh, thank you, May. I love you." Life returned to normal for several weeks. Angie was her usual exuberant, imaginative, intolerable self. I took my father's lead and ignored her. She didn't seem to mind. I heard her giggling and tumbling around every night, but I only heard her. No second voice, no heavy lurching. For a while, our shattered little household reached equilibrium. The day dawned brown and clear and cold. Everything looked flat to me. Empty and dimensionless, somehow half-formed. Like a painting abandoned by the artist. Heavy thumping roused me from a warm, dreamless sleep, followed by a shrill giggle. I was an anxious kid, verging on insomniac. That sleep was the first good one I'd had since school started. And to be woken up early, on a Saturday, by my idiot kid sister and her imaginary fucking friend. Her door, just a few feet away from mine, slammed open. Angie's giggling suddenly shrilled to a scream. "No, May. No." For the first time in my life, I was worried about my sister. There in the wedge between frame and door, fully illuminated by the rising sun, was an enormous face, a perfectly symmetrical oblong with small, obscenely voluptuous lips and round blue eyes like coasters. They glinted and shone in strange ways. Despite the chill of the room and the bleak decay in the world outside, those eyes glittered like a wild, sun-drenched ocean. I bolted out of the room, heart pounding, and dithered by her door. I thought of that awful, obscene face, and bit back a scream. Tears stung my eyes. I didn't want to go in, didn't want to see. It pointed at Angie, then winked. The mirror flashed again, and suddenly the creature was gone. We regarded each other for a long, awful moment. "Angie," I said. That's. She shook her head and turned back to the mirror. "Do you promise?" My sister stood up, sobbing wildly, and fell into the mirror. But they never came. I surveyed the room, chest heaving, panic rising. Nothing. No Angie. Not under the bed, not in the closet, not behind the dresser. She was gone, and we never found her. My dad didn't seem to care, and my mom wasn't around to make him. I cared, though. But life goes on. At least it did for me. In some ways, nothing really changed. After all, I'd barely spent any time with Angie in the months leading to her disappearance. By the time she disappeared, I was already too old to loiter in playgrounds by myself. So I took up running. No one pays attention to runners, even in parks. So that's what I do, every morning before work and every night after dinner. I go to Angie's favorite park, and I run. I hope I find her, because I need to tell her I love her. And I have to tell her I'm sorry.
You feel that? That weird pressure in the room? Yeah. That's the algorithm. It knows you're watching, and it gets real cranky when you don't feed it. A simple ritual helps. Click the little thumbs up, tap subscribe, say its name 3 times into your phone mic. Kidding, probably.
Engagement appeases the darkness. You know what to do.
Good, human. Now, back to the horror.
I made an unholy deal to save my wife from cancer, but it didn't go as planned, by Hyper Obscura. I tried everything up to that point. And I mean everything. You'd be amazed, and appalled, at the sheer quantity of bullshit snake oil miracle remedy shit you'll find if you just go looking for them. All the healers, shamans, witch doctors and loathsome charlatans preying on the weak and desperate. But conventional medicine had failed me. Failed my wife. And I couldn't find it in me to give up, no matter how much she begged me to. At first glance the Nameless Street seemed like just another hoax. A nonsensical ritual pasta designed to amass internet points. But the more I looked into it, the more I came to believe that there had to be some merits to it. Too many identical claims, too many similar experiences, too many vivid descriptions. Coming up empty on all other leads, I decided there'd be no harm in giving it a shot. The Nameless Street was as simple in its complexity as it was complex in its simplicity. At the end of an unnamed street, look for an abandoned house with a locked basement door. Find a way to get into the basement without breaking the lock. In the room beyond you'll find 2 chairs facing each other. Make sure to lock the door again. Place 66 candles in a wide circle around the room. At the center, place 1/6 of a candle. When night is at its darkest, light all the candles. Sit down in the chair with the back turned to the door, and count loudly to 66 and 1/6. If you get it all right, the devil himself will appear, granting you a single wish in exchange for your soul. This was the place. When I wasn't at the hospital, Stan was. I didn't even have to convince him. I just wanted someone to be there by her side at all times, and I think he understood that. My brother got along well with my wife, and it seemed like the right thing to do. When I arrived after work, Stan would be there, and we'd talk for a bit. It affected him too. Devoured him like it devoured me. He looked older than any younger brother should. I had to fix this, or we'd all just fade to nothingness. 33, 34, 35 dash. Don't you find this hysterically ridiculous? A cheery voice queried from behind me. I mean, you must have stopped at 66 and a sixth and gone, wow, this is some next level absurd as shit nonsense, right? He was not what I expected. At all. He was young, maybe in his mid-20s, long blonde hair, dressed in jeans and a white hoodie. He smiled widely, emerald eyes sparkling vividly as they scanned the room. All you had to do was ask, he mimicked holding a phone up to his ear. No need for this unnecessarily elaborate, he paused, waggling his right index finger around theatrically. I want to say ritual. WH. Who are you? I stammered incoherently. Are you? I staggered back into the wall. Are you the devil? Look, buddy, he grinned widely, it really isn't important. What is important, however, is what I can do for you. Let's sit, shall we? He beckoned for me to join him as he sat down. We have much to discuss. Jesus Christ, I mumbled. Was this really happening? Nothing about it felt right. It felt unholy. Blasphemous. My back scraped against the cold protruding bricks of the wall, like the pain somehow grounded me to reality. Jesus fucking Christ, I added. How do you know my name? I mumbled, still subconsciously backing into the unmoving wall. He threw his head back and laughed heartily. So you came here ready to summon the literal devil, but you're surprised he somehow knows your name? James, you're really out of your depth here, you know that right? He motioned towards the vacant chair. Sit, James. Sit, and we'll discuss what I can do for Nora. We've been through this, James. I know all I need to know, and that's just how it is. For instance, I know that Nora, sweet darling Nora, is slowly dying from cancer. I say slowly, but that's really not the case anymore, is it? I'd give her maybe a few days, a week at most. Better start making some arrangements. Choose a nice coffin, find a decent plot, organize the service. These things take time, you know. Wouldn't want to half-ass her funeral now, would you? WH. What do you mean? See, what I do with it, the cancer, is entirely up to me. I mean, I could just stuff it in you. And normally I would, you know. I'm a stickler for irony. You know how it goes, you can't live without the love of your life, so you make an unholy deal with some diabolical entity to save her, only to die days later. Hilarious. But since you've grown on me like a tumor, I'll do you one better. What do you say we stick the big C into your worst enemy instead? My worst enemy? Did I even have enemies? I mean, I didn't really like my boss. And my neighbor was incredibly annoying, and truth be told I could really do without the "you're not good enough for my daughter" attitude from my mother-in-law too. But an enemy? I suppose my coworker, Eric, was the closest thing I had to an enemy. He was demeaning and malicious, always going out of his way to make me look bad. The more I thought about it, the more I realized just how much I hated him. Yes, I said. Do it. There's this guy, Eric, at my Joe Dash. What are you Tal Dash? I could feel him touching me from the inside, fingers digging into tissue and muscle and organs, every little prod bringing insurmountable waves of torment, somehow spreading to every pain receptor at once. I couldn't breathe, so I couldn't scream, but I imagine every synapse in my body lighting up simultaneously to form a hysterical howl. So does that do it? He asked, his mouth now inches from my ear. Are you convinced? Do we have an agreement? I tried my best to nod, but I'm not sure you could easily discern the voluntary movements from the involuntary anymore. Blood was flowing in thick streams from the gaping wound on my chest, pouring into an impossibly deep pond on the cold concrete below. Suddenly he grabbed my hand, and shook it vigorously. "Good lad," he laughed heartily. "It's a deal then. I'll yank the nasty tumors from sweet darling Nora, and pack your worst enemy full of the stuff. Really can't wait for this one, James, sounds like an absolute riot." I could hear him walking towards the door. Heavy steps, echoing through the room. Too heavy for his lithe frame. Everything was turning black now, and I suppose I was mere seconds away from passing out and on when his voice brought me back once more. "Oh, right, I forgot," he chuckled. "You probably need these." "There you go," he said. "Good as new. Keep those suckers clean now, you hear? Stay away from cigarettes and huffing asbestos," he laughed. "Anyway, be seeing you, James. I have a feeling we'll talk again real soon." And with that, he was gone. I was left slumped over my chair, wheezing and spasming for minutes, before realizing I was completely fine. I refused to believe it at first. I examined my chest thoroughly, every inch of it, then turned my attention to the floor. Not a drop of blood. Not so much as a paper cut on my chest. It was like it had never happened. But it did, didn't it? The pain was so real, so horribly, gruesomely real. Minutes of excruciating torture that felt like years, and then, nothing. A miracle. My wife sat down with me a month later. "We need to talk," she said. I could tell by the look on her face that it wasn't anything good. There were tears, lots of them, crocodile and otherwise, and a pained, guilt-ridden expression. She wanted a divorce, she told me. She'd been seeing another man for quite some time now, but because of the cancer, and her imminent death, she didn't have it in her heart to tell me. But now that she was healthy and had her life back, she wanted to move on. Wanted to find happiness again. I suppose my life ended there. Betrayal comes in all shapes and sizes, but from my own brother. My own flesh and blood. It was too much to bear. And I guess I felt it already then. The hate. That seething anger and fury and resentment, consuming every fragment of my existence from there on out. She moved out the same day. Packed her shit and went to live with my brother. I sat in the darkness of my trashed living room for days, fueled and fed by nothing but bubbling detestation and loathing and hatred. I wanted to burn him alive. Nail him to the wall. Dig out his eyes with a rusty knife. He was already dead to me, but I wanted him dead to the world too. And then, like clockwork, he got diagnosed with cancer. Pancreatic. Such a beautiful word. Rolls right off the tip of your tongue. Pancreatic. Instant and terminal. My brother died days after they first caught it. It spread faster than anything they'd ever seen, they told me. A reverse miracle of sorts. I cried no tears at the funeral. I don't think I'll ever cry again. As I stare into the fathomless depths of my empty void soul, I can only nod and agree. Real soon.
That last one tasted like fear and poor decisions. Let's see what the next bite stirs. Hope you're hungry.
My grandmother survived the Holocaust, by Dopa Bean. Ken was such a successful cobbler that he and his wife, Zofia, began to hope that they might one day be wealthy. They dreamed of a large shoe shop for Kem, of purebred dogs for Charani, expansive gardens for Zofia, and a large, airy house for all of them. Now, Charani had many friends, so she naturally heard rumors of her father's benevolent sorcery. These stories both frightened and excited her. One night she went to Kem and asked, "Papa, is it true you make magic shoes?" He ruffled her hair. "I think I did once, and I suppose I could again, but only for those I love." He then ushered her off to help Zofia. Charani did as he bade, even though she felt annoyed and dissatisfied. Her father always spoke in riddles and nonsense poetry. But that, she supposed, was the price one paid for a kind and gentle father. And it was quite a low price, when all was said and done. Kem thought nothing of it, and moved on to the next shop, where he received the same dismissal. He tried other stores, other shops, and each one turned him away. But even perfect fathers cannot turn bad neighbors into good, brave men, and the shunning of Charani's family continued. At first, they assumed it was because Kem's family was Romani. Outsiders, undesirables, rat people, gypsies, so low they were beneath even the Jews, who Hitler called the race tuberculosis of the world. As food became scarcer and people became more afraid, they turned on each other, casting even their kindest neighbors out of the fold. And maybe Kem's Roma blood was the problem at first. And it would have been bad enough. The Nazis came soon after, violently tearing Charani's family and dozens of others away from the city and forcing them into a cold, filthy ghetto far away from home. Zofia and Charani wept every day, and so did Kem for a little while. But a good father's love and duty knows no bounds, so he pulled himself together and plied his trade within the confines of the ghetto. He had no materials with which to make new shoes, but with a few scraps and pieces of rubbish he could make any shoe as good as new. Finally, on her 13th birthday, just as the season's first bitter snowfall drifted down from a cold iron sky, the train came for her family. By this time, all three of them were terribly ill. Zofia had it worst. A deep, wet sickness had settled in her chest, squeezing her lungs and stealing her air each time she drew a ragged breath. Charani screamed and used all her strength to try and pry her mother's shoes from her father's hands. But Kem was far too strong for her, far too determined. No matter what she did, he continued to work, impervious to her rage. On the fourth day at sunrise, the train stopped. Around her, surviving passengers wept and screamed and clutched the dead bodies of their lost loved ones. Despite her anger and deep sense of betrayal, Charani crawled to her father as the doors shuddered open, blinding them with clear morning light. They'd been deposited at a rail junction. Their train, newly empty, chugged off the way it had come. Two other trains waited, engines sending stinking clouds of exhaust into the otherwise pristine air. Horror and desperate sorrow seized Charani. Guards took rings and papers and trinkets and all remaining belongings from the other prisoners. Charani expected they would take her shoes, but they merely shoved her through without a second look. Most amazing of all, the nights were tolerable. Charani rather believed this was the hallucination of a deluded mind, however. Because on the nights when she was most comfortable, she would feel something warm and liquid creep up from her feet and spread up over her head. As winter raged on, visions began to accompany this creeping warmth, translucent fur, smooth and short, like the house cat she'd fed in the ghetto. Even more strangely, dim stars shone within the fur, tiny yellow pinpricks, twinkling in the soft, warm darkness. She could still see the barracks through this queer invisible skin, still hear the cries and screams of the women around her, even the wails from the men's barracks. But she felt insulated from all of it. Separated. It made Charani sad, but distantly so. She had no friends in the barracks. She'd seen the way they snuck and stole from each other, the way they raided the fresh corpses every morning. She'd seen the other inmates eyeing her shoes, seen the covetousness in their eyes, and was deeply afraid that she would be killed for them. One brutal winter morning, during a pointless mission dragging logs all the way across the camp, she heard something so beautiful she thought it was a hallucination. A soft, sweet voice, drifting up and down in a beautiful, wordless song. He shook his head blearily, then smiled. Charani scanned the area. The guards were still occupied. So she leaned in, curling her fingers around the frozen wire of the fence, and said, "You have a beautiful voice. What is your name?" The man shook his head and made nonsense sounds. When she still didn't understand, he sang a swift, liquid scale, holding his mouth open. That's when she saw, he had no tongue. Lukash. The men with the pink triangles were tortured and subjected to hideous experiments, more so even than the other prisoners. Lukash had been injected with all manner of chemicals and poisons. When that failed, the Nazis had boiled his manhood away so that he could never practice his perversion again. Others had been used as targets for trainee SS officers. Lukash himself was not sure why or how he was alive. He was thin, sickly, and crippled now. He proved this by pulling off his thin slippers, revealing several missing toes. And it got worse. Food became sparser, yet the black-haired guard insisted on slipping her scraps of food from his table. She hated him for it, and every day resolved to toss the food on the ground and grind it into the dirt. But every day she was too hungry, and every day she accepted his little favors, even as the other inmates starved. Her only comforts were thoughts of her parents, her memories of Lukash, and of course her strange, invisible shoe guardian. She'd taken to stroking it every night, thanking it, and Kem, for its protection. As winter bled slowly into a crisp, bitter spring, her fellow inmates continued to die. At first the barracks refilled, but even that trickled to a stop. Whether it was because the Nazis had truly managed to finally kill all the Jews, or because they were diverting new prisoners to other camps, she didn't know. Charani sat up, willing her heart to stop pounding. The familiar warmth evaporated, shrinking down to her shoes and disappearing. Cold broke over her like a dark, cruel tide, and for the first time since entering the camp, Charani began to shiver. He stopped before her bed. "You bitch," he said softly. Charani recoiled. His voice was strange, almost dreamy. "You filthy, teasing little whore." Each word produced a heavy cloud that stank of cheap liquor. "You know what I want. Every day I show you. Every day I give you food from my table. I go without, so that you can have something." He angrily indicated the empty barracks. "Do you see? You are the only one left. That is because of me. I saved your life. I am still saving your life." He wrapped a hand around her throat, a gesture that was falsely tender and gravely threatening. "You have never thanked me, but you will tonight." And suddenly, Charani was flooded with warmth. Blazing, purifying heat. The guard screeched and reared back, falling to the floor. He stood, eyes blazing in the clear spring moonlight, and charged. The warmth disappeared from her suddenly. Panic immobilized her. The beautiful warmth had been her guardian's last stand, and it was finally over. She closed her eyes, waiting for the end as the guard screamed with rage. Silence followed. After a while, the starry fur wrapped itself around her. Warmth, beautiful and soothing and hot as a summer's day, enveloped her, along with profound tiredness. Then he patted her head awkwardly and walked away. Soon, far too soon, it was time to leave. And still, Lukash languished behind the fence. Charani would escape. She would survive. But Lukash, poor sweet frail Lukash, would continue to suffer. She ran her hands along the fence, scrabbling for a weak spot, a hole, anything she could tear open. But there was nothing. After a while Lukash gently took her hands and began to sing. Charani sobbed. Soon Lukash's fine wordless voice wavered, then broke, and then he was crying, too. Suddenly, Charani had an idea. A soldier came to her nervously. "Time to go," he said. When they found him, he no longer had the shoes. With great hesitation, he wrote that he had passed the boots along to a friend, one destined to remain in prison long after Lukash himself was released. He was afraid Charani would hate him for it, but she only smiled, because love is magic and magic is love, and even though a father's sacrifice cannot always save the world, it can save the lives of his children and their dearest loved ones. And it did.
Sleeping yet? Didn't think so. Next story's up. And yeah, it's worse. You're welcome.
We fought, but as far as sisterly relationships go, we did okay. She was my annoying best friend. That was what really started to get out of hand. The selfies. It sounds ridiculous, but in this modern age that's the type of shit you have to worry about. Not staying out past curfew, or bunking off school, they were archaic problems replaced by internet trolls and body dysmorphia, stemming from competing for imaginary thumbs up on the internet. It was sad. I remember the days of MSN, but damn was I glad I missed out on the days of Snapchat. I watched her change. She did whatever she could to stay in with the popular crowd. She craved attention, adoration, and most of all, likes. She rarely conversed with us, opting to spend her time alone in her room, putting on a full face of makeup just to take a single picture. I passed my A-levels and went off to university. I left my loving parents and my self-absorbed sister behind and went to study. It's awful, but I didn't think about Avery all that much. She was 15 years old and at the height of teenage ignorance, she didn't want to catch up with her older sister. Instead, I kept up with her through Snapchat. Every day she would post a dozen pouting pictures. All using those ridiculous filters. My least favorite of them all was the one that came with the black and white dog ears. Every photo those ears sat perfectly on her artificially smoothed face. After the first term I'd pretty much forgotten what my sister really looked like. I stayed at school over the break. Maybe things would have been different if I'd gone home and checked on my family, but I didn't. I'm ashamed to say that I didn't see any cause for alarm. I don't mean that Avery reposted the same picture every time. The differences were subtle, clothes, hair, eyeshadow, but the pose and the position were the same. And so was that fucking dog filter. Despite the fake covering, I could see in my sister's digitally enlarged eyes that she wasn't happy. Something was going on. She climbs out of her window late at night. I've gone to check on her before and she isn't there. I've called the doctors, mental health teams, the school, but no one's helping and she won't budge. My mum sounded utterly defeated. My parents have been strict but fair and always tried their best for us. It broke my heart to hear her so crushed. It broke my heart even more to think of the adventure I watched grow up, reduced to taking sad selfies alone in her bedroom. It was strange not to see Avery come bounding down the stairs. My parents just looked at me, lost for words. What's wrong with her voice? Dad looked at the ground, poorly avoiding the question, and Mum struggled to breathe through sobs, hands shaking. I shared a look with them before charging up the stairs. Avery. Open up. I'm home, aren't you gonna come and say hi? I rapped on the door loudly with my knuckles. Nothing. Avery. Open. I tried, a little louder. I had to find the perfect one. The vile, unrecognizable voice was responding cryptically. I was almost certain the perfect one hadn't been referring to a boyfriend. I felt the urge to get away, to get the train back to school and forget about my sister. Unbelievable what a little fear can do to a person. They say we all have fight or flight responses, and that day I learned I'm a flyer. It took everything I had not to run. Just wait for the professionals. They'll be here. My dad called up as I placed my first foot on the lower portion. I almost fell from the trellising as she raised her head to reveal her eyes, missing the lower lids in an attempt to enlarge them. Despite the horrors, she sported her signature vacant expression and pout, smothered in red lipstick. She was barely there, just posing in front of me with her disfigured face. I just wanted to look like my pictures.
You're still tuned to Horror Slop. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
I've been meaning to start working out for a while now, but never got around to it due to having a busy schedule and being lazy. I'd set my alarm up earlier before work to do some cardio, but would always end up snoozing it. Then, one day as I wasted my time browsing Facebook, I saw an ad which immediately caught my eye. Curious, I clicked on it and it took me to a website which sold a wrist gadget called DreamBody. It was essentially a wristband which you connect to your phone via Bluetooth, and it gives you daily reminders about your training and weight goals, caloric intake, etc. It cost only $59.99, so I ordered it immediately, not even caring if I was going to get scammed. A few days later, the gadget arrived and I wasted no time setting it up. I downloaded the app for DreamBody and connected it to the device, after putting it on my wrist. From there, I customized my plan. Warning: the weight loss goal deadline you input is higher than the recommended goal by DreamBody. Would you like to proceed? You are one step closer to your goal. Total training time, 15 minutes. Calories burned, 150. The timer was counting down. I tried to remove the pop-up, but it seemed as if my phone was frozen. I restarted it, but the message was still there. I pulled down the drop menu and turned off my Bluetooth, but to no avail. The timer was still running. Next shock in, 1 minute 15 seconds. I tried to get the wristband off, but it wouldn't budge, no matter how hard I yanked it. Next shock in, 23 seconds. Next shock in, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. Another wave of electricity shocked my entire body, this one even longer and more painful than the last one. When I recovered from the pain, I glanced at my phone again. I jumped out of bed and started running around the house, picking up clothes to put on along the way. The message on the screen changed now and said. I quickly put on my clothes and shoes and ran outside the house, practically sprinting on the sidewalk. The message changed and was in addition to my heart rate displaying the elapsed time and burned calories. My lungs and legs were burning, but I continued jogging for 20 minutes, until a notification sounded on my phone. Training complete. Make sure to drink water and consume protein-rich foods after any strenuous physical activity. I leaned on my knees, breathing heavily. I tried to get the gadget off my wrist again, but no dice. I returned home and took a knife out, carelessly trying to slice through it. It was as if the object was made from otherworldly material, because in the end my knife was left dulled from the sawing. Alright, no big deal, I'll just figure it out when I get back from work. It was time for me to go, so I didn't even have time to take a shower before work. I went to the office, finished my shift and came back home, exhausted. I ordered some pizza and tried out various tools in removing the gadget from my wrist. None of them worked, even the electrically powered ones, and I was left in the end with bloody wounds on my forearm. I tried uninstalling the DreamBody app from my phone, but I got an error every time. I was so desperate in the end that I formatted my entire phone. Everything was gone, but the app was still there. My pizza arrived, so I decided to take a break and eat dinner. As I sat down and took 2 bites of my pizza, a notification popped on my phone. Oh, come the fuck on. I scowled. Starving, I decided to ignore the message and continue eating. I mean, if the app was about to shock me, I could tough it out and eat some more, right? I took a bite and you can guess what happened next. The shock was so strong this time that I fell to the floor and writhed in pain for a whole minute, my vision becoming blurry. I threw the entire pizza away and spent the rest of the night starving. The following morning I was woken up by the vibration on my wrist. I jumped out of bed immediately, heart racing. The message on my phone said, "Begin your training. Next shock in, 4 minutes 58 seconds. I quickly put on my clothes and obeyed the device. The message now said, "Calories to burn, 300 kilocalories." I'm not sure if my heart will be able to survive this for much longer. If any of you see an ad for a fitness gadget called Dream Body, avoid it at all cost.
Something's still listening, and it wants more. Next story. Just don't say its name.
I'm so grateful I walked in on my husband of 3 years with his former partner, by Lighting Nations. It's funny, you never think you'll wind up married to a clown. Yet there I was at the age of 30, catering for some brat's 8th birthday party, when the mother stood at the far edge of the fancy garden and introduced Mr. Giggles to a chorus of cheers. From behind the lunch counter, I watched as my future husband made doves disappear with a flourish of his hands and juggled behind his back. Around him, the children sat in a little semicircle roaring with laughter. After the performance, Mr. Giggles wandered over to me, introduced himself as Johnny, and asked for a cheeseburger. That was quite a show, I said, slipping a beef patty into a bun. I remember thinking he looked kinda cute, you know, beneath the face paint and rainbow wig. Thanks, he said, still breathless from the pratfalls. I've been workshopping some new material. I used to have this bit with an angry hand puppet, but kids these days hate hand puppets. Go figure. Fast forward 6 years and the entire groom party, all professional clowns, pulled up to our wedding in a single Mini Cooper. Now here's a recipe for one strained marriage: take 2 independent contractors, mix in a lockdown, season with some overdue mortgage payments, Viola. Johnny crammed all his equipment inside this spare room at the back of the house, and one afternoon, while passing the outside hallway, I heard a hushed conversation from behind the door. Rather than become one of those couples who needed to constantly keep tabs on their spouse, I forced myself to walk on by. I finally succumbed to temptation and knocked on the door one afternoon. After some nervous shuffling about a case slammed closed, then Johnny pulled open the door and smiled, a short, nervous smile that showed too many teeth to be genuine. "Who were you talking to?" I asked, stealing a glance past his shoulder. Rudimentary furniture and gag props lay scattered about here and there. "Oh, which one?" His vague, non-committal answers left an unpleasant gnawing sensation in the pit of my stomach. Still, I trusted him. Then, while I chopped tomatoes in the kitchen one evening, he wandered in and said, "Is that a new knife?" "Don't worry, we can afford it," I replied, then continued chopping. His constant questioning of every purchase had grown tiresome. "Maybe if you took that Amazon delivery job," I mumbled. "Oh, you want me to quit clowning? Is that it?" His cracked the knuckles on his right hand. "Nobody said you have to quit. Maybe just get a real job for a little while too." He crossed the threshold of his inner sanctum, faced me, and stabbed the air with his finger. "You're crazy." "Oh please, then who are you talking to all the time? Why all the smoke and daggers?" He sighed. "There's parts of my life you'll never understand, Ruth. The clown world's complicated." Not rolling my eyes took a hero's effort. "If you and your mystery woman enjoy each other's company so much, why not run off and join the circus?" Meanwhile, every now and again, strange sounds rang out from Johnny's quarters. Scuffles. Furniture scraping roughly across the wooden floor. Muffled voices. Grunts, groans. But any time I snuck along and pushed my ear against the door, the room lowered its voice. For all I knew, there was a corpse stashed beyond that door. Maybe Bonnie had moved in right under my nose. Just then, I hated myself for not trusting my husband. Was his behavior suspicious? Most definitely. But I jumped to conclusions. Invaded his privacy. And worst of all, insulted his passion. A romantic gesture seemed like the perfect way to patch things up. With food being my great passion, it'll come as no surprise I decided a romantic dinner would spice things up. But I wanted a grand gesture to go with the meal. A secret ingredient, if you will. It's amazing the things you can learn from YouTube these days. I darted around the city picking up materials, then, over the course of the next few days, worked on my little project in secret. Anytime Johnny emerged from his lair, I'd stash my work in progress behind a sofa cushion or under the desk. On the big night, he arrived home late from a gig at a children's hospital. My gift lay on the kitchen counter, wrapped up in a gift box. In the dining room, I dimmed the lights and lit some candles. I thought we could have a romantic meal. I made honey-roasted tenderloin, your favorite. Okay, he said, his voice all flat. Let me go change. Not quite the enthusiastic response I'd hoped for. He disappeared into that room, again, while I watched the candles burn themselves out. How long did stripping off a costume take? The tenderloin would be cold at this rate. Stepping into the hallway, I heard the voices. Again. Except this time, it sounded like there was a row going on. Suspicious, I tiptoed along, not that there was much danger of being heard, and held my ear against the door. Eager to catch him red-handed, I burst through the door, and when I saw what was going on in there, I froze. Ruth, he stammered away for almost 10 seconds before swallowing a gulp and relaxing the muscles in his jaw. Then, without moving his mouth, he said, "We've been talking, me and Mr. Giggles." On the end of his arm, the puppet slowly rotated toward me. "And we don't care for the way you've been talking about clowns. No siree, we don't care for it at all." The stammer and anxiety had vanished. Johnny now spoke in that stern tone teachers used when lecturing a student. This couldn't be happening. He couldn't be so trapped in delusion he communicated via puppet. "Johnny, have you been in here talking to a fucking doll this whole time?" The notion drew a laugh from me. In a way, I think an affair might have been easier to swallow. "You need help," I said, pinching the bridge of my nose. "Help?" he replied, his mouth a permanent straight line. "As if we need help from you. You only wanted Johnny, not Mr. Giggles." Her Royal Highness couldn't stand being married to a clown, could she? She didn't want a man who brought joy into children's lives, she just wanted an expensive kitchen for cooking fancy French cuisines. Well, me and Mr. Giggles hate French food. Don't we, Mr. Giggles? When the puppet faced me again, he mouthed, "I'm sorry." Terrified, I spun into the hall and made a desperate break for the front door, Bonbon cackling away. Then on the far side of the landing my husband's hands locked around my waist and hurled me into the wall, a glass cabinet, and finally over a side table, which made me crash onto the floor, hard. Still gasping, I crawled along the hall and into the kitchen, away from the psychotic jester. Bolts of pain raced through my ribs every time my arm lifted above my head. The scuffle had left me broken and bleeding in a dozen places. My hands fumbled across the ceramic tiles for a pot or a pan, anything to defend myself with. I came at last to the counter. Wait. My fancy knife lay perched on top. Ignoring the needles drilling into my midsection, I clawed my way up the side and unintentionally swiped the gift box onto the floor. So much for fighting back. Now I could only pray some portion of the man I married was still rolling around in there. His lower lip wobbled. As he backed away, I slid down the counter and onto the floor, beside the gift box. Above me, Bonbon tried to strike him, but he grabbed his own forearm and held her in place. "No," he said, straining from the effort of resisting the puppet's influence. "I won't let you do this." Out of nowhere, Johnny's body relaxed. For a moment I thought he broke the spell, that we'd survived this horrible nightmare. I watched, horrified, as he bashed his face against the counter and then the wall, producing a sickening thud. The macabre performance left me in a state of shock, otherwise I might have dragged myself to my feet and snatched a knife. A slab of tenderized beef loomed over me, grinning. Flakes of peeled face paint and juicy blood streaked Johnny's head white and red, like vanilla ice cream doused in strawberry sauce. The rubber nose had fallen off and several teeth were dislodged, broken, or missing. A crudely made lamb puppet sat on the end of my arm, one with a pink bow and big, bright eyes. "Say hello to Lamb Chop," I rasped. Johnny hesitated, that gap-toothed smile vanishing. In my best, cute voice, I said, "That's right, I'm Lamb Chop, and I came here to tell you Ruth loves you. Both of you, Johnny and Mr. Giggles." "What are you doing, you big lummox? I'm in control here." Bonbon screamed. "Kill her," screamed Bonbon, furiously shaking back and forth. "Kill her, kill her, kill her." His gaze whipped between me and the puppet. Then, with a decisive shake of his head, he said, "No." When Bonbon next lunged, Johnny held his own forearm, pinned her flat against the counter by pressing his knee beneath the crook of his elbow, and then grabbed the butcher knife from the stand. Unable to wriggle free, the psychotic puppet squealed and squirmed around, helpless. Exposed cartilage and ripe muscle trailed beneath the elbow, spurting blood thicker than peppercorn sauce over the counter, sink, and part of the wall. Johnny stumbled across the room, finally hitting the floor in a dramatic manner, reminiscent of those pratfalls he did so well. "Ruth," he sputtered, as he lay flat in a pool of his own blood. And through the tears, despite all the fresh trauma, I let out a little chuckle. My husband. Ever the entertainer.
Whew, that one gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
It started when I'd found the key to her room. Our bedrooms were across the hall from each other on the second floor of the house. The doors had old-fashioned doorknobs that locked with a key, which we didn't have and which I hadn't seen before. Then one day I found a ring of unmarked keys in a junk drawer in the foyer's side table. I went around trying them in everything until I'd matched every key to a door in the house, including our bedrooms. Nearly every key on the ring had a spare, but not all did. The key to my sister's room was one of them that had only one master key. That was when I'd gotten the idea. I pocketed the key to her room and left the rest in the drawer where I'd found them. Back downstairs, I acted innocent as we watched TV together. I loitered until my sister yawned, kissed our parents goodnight, and went upstairs. I waited on the couch, grinning with suspense. It was a good long moment before we heard her shriek. Then the sound of wood banging. She streaked downstairs, in tears, asking for help with her door. Father went up with her to see what was the matter. They both came downstairs again, her still in tears, and he in confusion. "It's locked," he said. Mother got up and retrieved the keys from the side table in the hall. All three of them went upstairs, I waited until they were gone to fall over myself laughing, pretending to find something funny on TV. By the time I got sleepy and went upstairs, they were still there in a huddle trying and retrying every key. Of course, none of them fit. Mother suggested my sister sleep in my room until they can call a locksmith in the morning. I was annoyed at this and produced the key from my pocket, too tired to care about the trouble I'd get into. It was just a joke, I said in my defense. After we'd gotten her door unlocked, Mother made me return the key to the drawer, saying the first chance she got, she'd get it duplicated to avoid this situation again. Naturally, she'd forgotten. This wasn't the first time she'd done that. She always came right back home before she got to the end of the street. I waited for her to give it up and return, but as the hour turned to 2, and then 3, I began to worry. I waited by the chair closest the front door, and then the window. At some point I'd gone out and walked around our yard and then the neighborhood, but saw no sign of her. I came home with my heart in my throat. I decided to keep waiting instead of call my parents from the kitchen phone. 10 minutes more, I told myself, then I would. .. I carried the key in my pocket during her funeral. My parents barely looked at me, and I wouldn't blame them. They had hardly spoken to me in the days since her death except in harsh little commands to hurry up, get dressed, fix your tie, get in the car. I behaved like the perfect son they'd always wanted, but that did nothing to warm them up to me. I felt the key burning in my pocket where I kept my hands pocketed and clenched. I brought out the key and went to pat her cold, marble hands, as if to say goodbye, I'm sorry. As I did, I tucked the key under her fingers folded together over her chest. Please come home, I whispered. .. I hummed the tune for Keith, who had the inane idea that he knew the composer of the song. We fell into a debate about that, and to refresh his memory of the song and prove my point, we went up to her room to retrieve the music box. The door was locked. We peered into the keyhole and found that it was too dark for that time of day. Then I realized why. There was a key blocking the hole. It had been locked from the inside. But when they did finally get home, I found I could hardly mention anything to them. I stayed quiet all through dinner until it was time for me to go upstairs to bed. I didn't want to go, but I didn't want to upset my parents further. I stopped outside my door and glanced at hers across the hall. Silent. I didn't dare try the knob again. Lies, she shrieked. You and your friend were fooling around in the house yesterday when I was not here. All she was thinking about, now that she shook herself into reality, was that we couldn't duplicate a key we didn't have. What's more, she decided the door wasn't locked but merely jammed by humidity or something else, apt punishment for her for not having opened the door in a while. She decided we would have to call a locksmith that very day. Once she flew this idea by my father, however, he would have none of it. He left his breakfast half-eaten at the kitchen table and roared out to the garage to retrieve his toolkit and roared back in and straight up the stairs, followed by my mother rolling her eyes behind his back as he spewed forth his wounded pride. Gingerly I hung back in the hall as my father began to play locksmith at my sister's door. Through this gap, my father slid a sheet of old newspaper along the floor, a good deal of a centerfold to cover as much ground as possible. Then with a thin metal instrument from the screwdriver kit, he prodded into the hole until we all heard a thin, distinct thud of metal on the paper on the other side. A dot of light was cleared in the doorknob. Mother asked father if he was quite finished playing locksmith so we could call a professional. He wasn't quite ready to give in, and as they continued to bicker, I left them and went downstairs, out the back door. I circled around the yard to look up at my sister's window from the outside. They had picked her room very carefully. Not only had she gotten the best view but the window was the most secure from any break-ins from the outside. You couldn't get to its ledge from the roof or any outdoor piping, there were no tree branches close enough for a foothold. This side of the house was smooth and unscalable. And as I stared up at her open shutters and drawn curtains, the way they had been the last day of her life, I saw that the window panes were intact. Nobody had gotten in from there. Looking carefully and for as long as I could stand, I detected no movement or light from the dimness behind the curtains. ////. I was frozen, but barely a second later my father dashed up the stairs, eyes wild. My mother called after him in a fright but then followed him after barely a moment of hesitation. I was drawn upward as well as though by magnetism, though I wanted to be nowhere near that room. It seemed we stood there holding our breaths for a good half-minute or so, before my father stepped back from the door and took my mother's elbow, leading her downstairs. He gestured with his head at me to do the same. Downstairs, they spoke in hushed funereal voices, wondering at what was going on. I couldn't bring myself to say much, and for once my mother showed real concern toward me. She had me sit down at the kitchen table while she got me a glass of apple juice to revive my energy, afraid I'd faint. I noticed my reflection in the chrome body of the toaster oven, pale as a... I didn't dare say the word even in my mind. We stayed downstairs for the most part. At some point, my father went out to look at the window the same way I'd done, and had come back to report to my mother the same things I had observed. My mother asked again whether we should call a locksmith, but I could see her resolve had dissolved, and so had my father's. He didn't seem all that keen to be the locksmith either. At dinner, my mother asked me, as if she had just remembered, whether I had really left the only key to my sister's room in her coffin. I nodded my head, just once. I was sure I had, but I didn't want to be sure anymore. Mother asked nothing else. Father wondered if calling a priest was more appropriate, and my mother gave him a dirty look. Everyone knew that priests always failed in the movies, and besides, neither of my parents were believers, not in God, not in ghosts, not in anything. I wasn't sure they even believed in me when I said the key was buried with my sister. But that lack of belief kept us all suspended in a swirling and tortuous meaninglessness where the only meaning that now presented itself was a dangerous one. ////. I almost thought this was a good thing, to have that room occupied once more, but I couldn't bring myself to be grateful. It was I who had asked her back after all, but I dared not confess that part. We kept this up for the next few days, and no matter how late I tried to dally after school instead of coming straight home, I would always be the first one in. My parents were trying to stay away as long as they could, too. But by the middle of the second week of this, my mother decided what it was they had to call a real estate agent. I wanted to ask Keith myself, desperately, but his parents wouldn't let me near him anymore. Meanwhile, my parents were throwing themselves into the search for a new place to live. We knew now that we were in a dangerous situation. One key. One key, over and over. And then it went quiet again so suddenly that the silence was just as loud as anything before or after. But it had gotten so that it seemed the music was seeping into the walls like a pipe had burst and bled into the paper. The paint on the wall seemed to shift in my mind's eye in the half-light. We were all unable to fall asleep until dawn, and our daylight lives were thrown out of rhythm. We stumbled home exhausted and stayed on guard all day, hearing that one key play on and off throughout the afternoon and evening, and then we stayed keyed up all night, to repeat again the next day. We were fairly at the end of our rope. I woke up to hear the music over my head and right beside my ear. I snatched myself away immediately, and saw that my parents had done the same. The music, that one demonic key, was throbbing louder than usual through the wall opposite from my sister's bedroom, where our headboard was. The broken note played again and again, traveling and swelling and surrounding us. My parents were up in an instant, scrambling to get dressed and yelling at me to get moving as I sat there frozen. They had to yell because the music was so loud now it was impossible the neighbors would remain undisturbed by it. The moving company we hired was scheduled to come by and help us the next morning, but we had to get out right then, at 3:30 in the morning. My father said we would return later to help the movers if they showed up, but for now we were going to a nearby motel with nothing but an overnight bag hastily thrown together.
That last one tasted like fear and poor decisions. Let's see what the next bite stirs. Hope you're hungry.
He'd been working late, as he often did, regardless of birthdays or holidays. I understood it was painful memory for him, and though our relationship had always been a bit strained, I never blamed him for making a living. Because, as a single father, he had a lot on his mind, and I respected that. A few weeks after the funeral, I was trying to piece together the legal mess that comes following someone's death, inheritance, and so on. It certainly wasn't anything a teenager should have to deal with, but I was alone, no close family, no one to guide me through the world. Dear Richard, I'll start this letter by admitting to one undeniable truth. I'm not a good man, and I've been an even shittier father. I've made plenty of mistakes, left too many things unsaid. I could make up the excuse that I'm simply a product of my time and the people that raised me, but I'll cut through the bullshit and just apologize. I'm writing this on your birthday, you've just turned 18, and I'm staying behind at work to finish this up. I don't think I'll hand it to you yet, I'm still not done dealing with my own issues, but I promise that as soon as I'm able to man up, I'll tell you all the things I should have as you grew up. Because he was right, we'd never been close, and I never thought he loved me, but hearing these simple words, though only from a piece of paper, was far more than I could handle. And that would have been it, my father had passed and life moved on. I kept the small house for myself, it was already bought and paid for, and I kept on with my studies. It was beautiful, silver envelope, just like the last one. Encased in a pattern of vines and bizarre-looking symbols, just small enough to remain hidden at first glance. In the center it simply said my name, written crudely, but not without charm. His handwriting was unmistakable, the letter without a doubt came from my father, but how had he sent it 1 year past his demise? I thought about it briefly, and figured he must have instructed his lawyer to send a letter on my birthday each year. It sounded unlike something he would have done, but I'd already been surprised the last year, so I just opened it and started reading. Dear Richard, where do I begin? I'm not even sure if this letter will reach you considering where I am, but I'm giving it a shot anyway. There are no horizons here, the world only ends when it's too far away to comprehend, just tiny figures dancing in the distance, but it's beautiful nonetheless, enveloped in colors I never knew existed. It's perfect. We don't feel hunger, thirst, nor tiredness. Yet, the food is bountiful and always tastes exquisite. I don't need it, but it's a joy to feast nonetheless, never feeling too full, never gaining, nor losing weight. The population is strangely scattered here, and none I spoke to have been here for more than a few years. I suspect there's some kind of hierarchy in place, or maybe we have to wander further into the city to find our loved ones. It's a lot to take in, and wish I could tell you more, but now I need to go. In any case, I love you, Rick. I wish I had said that while I was still alive, but at the very least this is better than nothing. So, without any further solutions, I let it go. I put the letter alongside the rest of my father's belongings, and forced myself to move on. I found her, after an impossibly long search I finally found her. Your mother, Helen, the love of my life. I knew she had to be here, she'd always been one of the best people I knew. I guess I should explain. Your mother, she's not exactly herself. I found her on top of one of the spires. Rick, I've never seen her like this, she looks nothing like the woman I knew and loved before, yet I know it's her, I can feel it in my heart. She's so skinny, emaciated, and on the brink of starvation. I didn't even realize that could happen, I myself haven't eaten in weeks, yet I feel completely fine. She just keeps repeating the same sentences over and over. I tried to convince her to leave with me, but she doesn't even recognize who I am anymore, and I can't simply force her. Believe me, I tried. Up here, it's just impossible to do anything to anyone against their will. I realized that when I tried to write about what I saw on the first day, but found that I couldn't form the words. It's hard to describe, but we have free will here as long as we follow the rules. Anything else is literally impossible. I love you, Rick. I hope we don't see each other too soon. Just live a good life, it's far too short. His handwriting seemed rushed towards the end. I must have read through the letter a dozen times, trying my best to figure out what was going on. Since I had no means of tracking the letter, I couldn't do much other than listen to my gut. As strange as it might sound, I believed every word I read. Of course, when I opened the door the following day, it was still there, mushy with smudged ink from a small storm that passed during the night. Defeated, I could do nothing but wait for another year to pass. As my birthday rolled around, I hatched a plan to catch whoever delivered the letters. I camped outside in my garden, waiting for the culprit. Hours passed, I waited from the early hours, and as midday arrived I decided to call it quits, and head back inside. Happy birthday, Rick. I'm happy I have the opportunity to stay in touch, even if it's impossible for you to respond. She's gone, your mother, Helen. I went back to the spire. I had an idea, but she'd simply vanished, leaving nothing behind, no trace that she ever existed. I knew something was wrong even before getting there. The buildings have always seemed impossibly tall, but that time I just couldn't get up the stairs. They kept going for days, weeks of climbing, and once I finally reached the top, I was alone. I don't know what to do. I haven't eaten anything since we last spoke a year ago, nor have I had a drink. I don't sleep, I don't do anything other than search for her. A few weeks ago I approached one of the guards. I don't know why I hadn't thought of it before, but if heaven was real, then God had to be somewhere up here. I asked the guard about it, and he laughed at me. He touched me on my shoulder and whispered a few incomprehensible words into my ear. It was like a veil was lifted off me. I could truly see this place for what it is, a concrete jungle with a sky so dark I don't know how I didn't notice it before. I hope you understand, Dad. I picked it up in uncomfortable anticipation. My heart raced as I held it with trembling hands. Crudely drawn pictures covered the front, symbols I couldn't decipher, and a drawing of a dome-like structure surrounded by bizarre shapes that I assumed to be twisted spires.
Still with us? Good. That last one was just the warm-up. Let's go deeper.
I discovered a town where no one is allowed to die, by Richard Saxon. At least I did until I found a town called Silverwoods. According to my anonymous source, it was a place that hadn't changed since the late 50s. A remnant of a bygone era, suffering from a horrible curse. Mind you, this was before the time of Google Maps. I had to rely on my source's instruction when searching for the town. I fully expected it to be a prank, but my job was exactly that, to prove or disprove information. At a first glance, it looked abandoned. I parked my car on the side of the road, ready to call the myth bullshit. Then I heard someone call out. "Who are you?" he asked. I explained that I had been given directions by an anonymous source, and that I was hunting down myths and legends. Only then, did I notice that his leg had broken. He dragged it along as he limped around. The weirdest part was, that his skin was covered in scratches, all looking fresh. "Are you alright?" I asked nervously. "Are you alone here?" On the ground, I noticed what I assumed was a dead bird. Its torso had been ripped open, exposing the organs within. It looked like a cat attacked it. Yet, it tried to move around, alive despite its grave injuries. He led me inside an old house. No sooner had I taken a step through the front door, before my nose was assaulted by the stench of rotting flesh. There were a dozen people, littered around the room in various states of mutilation. Yet, they were all breathing, living with impossible injuries. The myth had been proven true, but I couldn't believe it. It would only make things worse, the old man said. I already had my phone out, ready to dial 911. But, out in the middle of nowhere, I didn't have a single bar of signal to help me. You came here to learn the history of Silverwoods, and I'm going to tell you, he said. Since our town was founded in 1911, we've been a regular farming community. A small town that hardly ever saw any visitors. Most of us were born and raised here, so on the rare occasion that someone passed through, it was a big deal. A cause for celebration. Then, in 1956, a man arrived in Silverwoods. With his fancy clothes and expensive car, he starkly contrasted our modest surroundings. He didn't visit for business, nor did he look to settle down in the region. All he wanted was to spend a year with us. At the end of his visit, he promised us a gift never to be forgotten. As he finished the sentence, I heard faint screams coming from outside. They sounded horribly hoarse, and emitted a clear message of agony. The screams got louder. Amid them, I could hear faint begs for mercy. Then, once his year in Silverwoods had ended, he asked us a simple question. What was it? I asked. Do you want to live forever? He nodded. He promised us that our bodies wouldn't age. Alas, without time affecting our bodies, we lost the ability to feel hunger, thirst, and the need for sleep. Our bodies can't be killed by any injuries, disease, nor destruction. But, we can also never heal. Every injury we sustain, no matter how minor or severe it is, stays with us until the end of time. That is our curse. Out. What do you mean? Some people got the idea that they could elude our curse, by destroying their own hearts, others attempted to crush their heads. But, they were all wrong. They can't die, they're not allowed to. Then, he laughed. It wasn't a cheerful laugh, but one filled with malice. Stop it. We don't want it to stop, he said. 10 years ago, that same man returned to our town. He hadn't aged a day, and still smiled cheerfully as he greeted us. He offered us death, release from our horrific lives. Because, he told us what happens to us after we die. And I can promise you, it's a far darker fate than the one we've been condemned to.
Still here? Aw, look at you. Brave little meatbag. Too late to back out now. Next story's already watching.
I was always close with my grandparents, who took me in when I was 6. My mom had passed away from cancer, and my dad had succumbed to an addiction problem shortly thereafter. I don't really remember my mom being sick, and that was probably for the best. I always recalled her beautiful brown eyes and how soothing her voice was to me. She showered me with affection, and I always felt safe and loved around her. My father was another matter entirely. He was rarely around and I had only a couple memories of him, but what stuck with me was that I always got very queasy anytime the memory struck. He had piercing blue eyes and a voice that bellowed so strongly that I couldn't help but feel threatened by him. He was apparently from a family with a lot of money, as I was provided a good life that was above the means that my grandparents could have afforded on their blue-collar jobs. I grew up happy and healthy, and didn't question anything until my mid-20s after the death of my grandpa. I was devastated as she called into the hallway to ask to speak to me, hoping to keep my emotions in check for the night. Her gaze narrowed as I pulled up a chair and sat beside her. I grabbed her hands, clammy and wrinkled with age, and asked her how she was feeling. She sat up suddenly and in a stern tone said, "Stevie, what I am about to tell you is something that your grandfather and I never intended for you to know. We tried our whole lives to shield you from everything, but unfortunately my time is running out and you need to know the truth." I instinctively slumped in my chair, perplexed. There was no way this could be a deranged rambling, but it was just too much to believe. Could she really have kept a secret like this from me, and why? I was shocked to see your father in the doorway, beaming from ear to ear like his guests of honor had arrived. "Dorothy. Stephen. What a wonderful surprise, so glad you could make it. Your grandfather was irate and demanded to see you and your mother or else there'd be hell to pay." Stephen went on berating your father for another minute before that scumbag interrupted yelling, "Enough," so loudly the room seemed to shake. "Please have a drink and I will provide you with everything you need to know, and you will be able to see both Christina and Stevie tonight," as he walked to the bar cart to prepare a couple drinks. I was elated at the news but confused by the deliberate break in communication. Was the silence from our daughter involuntary, or had we done something that upset her? Your dad took a puff on his cigar while handing us a drink, and exclaimed after he blew out a ring of smoke, "I am so excited for you to witness this. Your grandson is more special than you could ever imagine." I was unsettled but your grandfather pressed for more information. For generations, the royal families from all over the world have had a special ritual that helps bring us all closer and ensures that we solidify our power. We never know who gets picked and from where, which means that the chosen ones can hail from anywhere. Each generation brings a different number of chosen children who actually rule the world, and they in turn must seek out the right sacrifice to beget more chosen children. This has progressed for centuries, with the chosen leading regardless of titles and who held the crown of a king or queen. Now, your grandson is the only chosen in this generation. This has never happened since the pact began, making him the chosen of chosens. Let us join the feast and celebrate. As she finished, she took a deep breath and closed her eyes. I sat with my mouth wide open as she passed on, not knowing what to think.
Anyway, let's lighten the mood with something fun and... Nah, just kidding. It gets worse. Hit it.
My uncle suffered the same fate a couple of years later, as did my brother, who died about 5 years ago. Even as a kid, I always looked up to him, not only vertically, but as a role model. In fact, our birthdays were only a few days apart, so we usually saw each other around that time. He had this aura surrounding him, like an invisible shield that prevented anything malicious from getting too close. Everything he did with purpose, and with an undying smile on his face. Only once did he ever break his perfect facade, at my father's funeral, but even then he seemed more disappointed than he did sad. Year zero, that's what he called his 40th birthday. For him, it marked the true beginning of his life, creating jokes about his age, claiming he just turned 5 years on his 45th birthday, and so on. It's going to sound a bit crazy, but I'll tell you anyway. On your birthday, once you turn 40, a man will come knocking on your door at precisely midnight. Despite the odd hour, you'll feel compelled to let him in. Don't worry, he won't come to harm you, he just wants to talk, and once he has said what he wants to say, he'll offer you a choice. Which brings us to today, my 40th birthday. Wearing nothing more than my pajamas, I made my way to the front door. With slight hesitation, I looked through the peephole. On the other side, stood a middle-aged man in a suit, with a friendly smile on his face. Speechless, I could do little more than to gesture for him to enter my home. I'd made up my mind long ago to deny him entrance, yet I felt compelled by his presence. I followed him obediently into the kitchen, and we sat down at the table. He just kept staring at me without speaking a word, his smile never leaving his face. "You seem surprised to see me," the man finally said after minutes of silence. "I'm assuming you expected my visit?" I nodded my head, still unable to speak. "Why are you here?" I eventually asked. His smile vanished, replaced with an expression of utter confusion. I didn't respond, and he stared into my eyes, not moving a muscle. "As you wish," he sighed. "I'm here to talk, to tell you the answers to each and every question you've ever had. Anything you want to know, I will tell you, no matter how stupid or bizarre of a question it is. I promise you nothing but truth." Before I could answer, he just went on talking. "That's the beauty of our little meeting. I will tell you the answer, but not until I believe you're ready." He leaned back in his chair and waited for me to keep asking questions, though from the smug look on his face, I could tell he knew exactly what I'd ask. "Who are you? You're really bad at this, you know. Not that it makes a difference, I know exactly what you want to know, you don't even have to speak. So, how about we start with something innocent, He stared deep into my eyes, digging through my brain looking for questions I didn't even know I had. "Ah, you want to know if your ex-girlfriend still thinks about you? Julia, that's her name, yes. Could we maybe go somewhere else? My wife is sleeping, and I said before being cut off. He stood up from his chair before screaming. "Oh Hannah. I'm talking to Mark in the kitchen, I'm just about to tell him all the secrets of the universe, and if you come downstairs I'll tell you too. I think we're good." By then, most of the adrenaline had settled in my body, and I started to grasp the more advantageous aspect of our conversation. I could ask literally anything, and he'd answer me, but I still needed more proof he was for real. Just before my father died, he told me something I've never told anyone else. I didn't understand it at the time, but when he died the next day I couldn't stop thinking about it. "Be a better man than me, Mark," he said, but the voice I heard was the one of my father. My heart raced at the familiarity, and Lucifer just smiled in return. "Sorry about what?" He didn't. I stuttered. "There are good people here too, it's not all that bad," I argued. He stood up from his chair and started to pace around, as he lectured me on the futile nature of human beings. "What happens when you die?" he finished my question for me. "Yeah, do we end up in hell?" "No, you just stop existing, the little fragment of divine power within you, the one you think is worth to be called a soul, is harvested by my workers. We need the fragments to make more desirable beings. You'll probably need a few minutes to process. Do you have anything to eat?" "So, what do you do then, since God has left, apparently leaving you behind with the rest of us?" "I want to offer you a choice." Before I could clarify, the walls around us started to dissolve, the ground cracked beneath our feet, and every piece of furniture not stuck to the wall fell through the ground. I stood up in panic and looked at Lucifer with pleading eyes, but we didn't fall with the rest, we simply floated. It wasn't long until the world around us had been erased from existence, and we stood in a gray, empty void. Where are we?" I stuttered. "Give it a minute," he said calmly. Buildings appeared all around us, tall, modern architectural masterpieces, colored in bizarre mixtures of silver and blue. All stretching far up into the sky, so uniform, nothing deviating from its neighboring design. Obviously not, this is my city. I made it some 100,000 years ago, it's what you people call purgatory, though I prefer to just call it the place in between, he said. I looked around, the street thousands of feet below seemed so empty, devoid of any people. In a different section, I keep expanding this place as people flow in. You see, Mark, this is what I offer you. Eternal life in this city, or to be erased by time itself, in a few decades, quick to be forgotten by the world you once lived in. What do you mean, why? God might have given up on humanity before you were even created, but I still see your potential. Unfortunately, your belief in him still stopped most of you from accepting my offer, but you are just in the right state of religious mind to be reasonable. You see, I need you all to believe in the glorious afterlife described in your religious books, just not too much. That's the choice I offer you, a chance to live in the Silver City, to have a purpose, all of eternity at the tip of your fingers, but that means you'll have to die, today, and come with me. What about my family? I'm sorry, Mark, but they're not ready. Most of them have been poisoned by their upbringing in religious households. Only a few of you are suitable for the job. Well, our time is up. You have today to decide. At midnight the deal expires, and you return to your short existence. I felt exhausted after Lucifer left. I'd been given the ultimatum of my life. I grabbed a cooler full of beer from the fridge, at 7 in the morning, and sat myself down on the front porch. An hour later, and 2 beers down, I saw my grandfather strolling down the street, waving at me. He could see the look of defeat on my face, and sat himself down by my side. So, how did the chat go? You did talk to him, right? Why did you choose to stay? I asked. You got another one of those for me, kiddo, he asked. I met your grandmother when we were just 18, by then my father, and his father before had both left us, so it's safe to say I was aware of the family curse, but though I didn't learn exactly what happened until much later, I promised myself I'd live life to the fullest up until my time came. I figured I would just die like all the others, so imagine how relieved I was when I was actually given a choice to stay. He took a large sip of his beer, almost finishing it in a single gulp. But why would want to stay, if once we die, there's nothing left on the other side? If nothing here matters, then what's the point? Who's to say it doesn't? Just because time here is limited, does that really mean it's not important? Besides, if I have to exist in a place without your grandmother, I'd rather just cease to exist. When we got married, I promised to stay by her side forever, and that's exactly what I intend to do. I looked at my granddad in admiration, 83 years of age, at the end of his lifespan, yet completely carefree, in charge of his own destiny. We talked until my wife woke up. She made my favorite breakfast, invite both myself and my granddad inside. She showed a genuine sense of joy, and I envied her, living life in ignorance of the horrible truth. I smiled as we ate together, the first time since my meeting with Lucifer. I'll enjoy this day the best I can, after all, it might be my last.
Need a break? Too bad. These stories don't wait, and neither do we. Next one's worse, in the best way.
I got hit with this nasty shit once a few years ago, during my first visit to meet Marla's parents. They ran a llama farm. I got a little drunk and started goofing around with one of the llamas and it got me, right in the face. I wasn't allowed in the house that night, because I smelled so bad, and had to sleep in a tent, alone. They burned the tent afterwards. I was very respectful to llamas after that. Next, a single bolt of lightning can contain up to 1 billion volts of electricity. By comparison, a defibrillator operates at closer to 1,000 volts. After describing all of this, the businessman confessed that the first daughter was never murdered at all, she had died by accident, falling off a horse. He had framed Stevens, who was a rising competitor and a threat to his business. Now, he knew, Stevens was coming for his righteous revenge. Marla had always bought into the legend of the Weeping Wisp, and went so far as to drag me to the local library once, where we spent hours going through the microfiche archives. There was enough there that you could convince yourself that the story was true, if you didn't think about it too hard. As for me, I thought it was utter bullshit. When you're dead, you're dead. Or that's what I always believed, right up until a few months ago. Now, I don't think that's always true. / It was the night before our wedding was to take place. We were going to have it at Marla's parents' farm, and were gathered together with some of the wedding party in their house, well into our cups. There was a thunderclap and rain started hammering down on the metal roof. Floppy, or more formally, Mr. Floppy Ears, was Marla's favorite llama. She'd named him as a kid, and spent a lot of time with him growing up. "Baby," I said. "It's pouring out. Floppy will be fine." "No," said my fiancé. "If I don't go out there, he'll be up all night freaking out. I want him fresh for the wedding. He has to be there." Marla got up, put on her raincoat, and left through the front door. "So anyway," said Jake, still standing on the coffee table, "we find somebody sober enough to drive us to Taco Bell, and our boy here just goes absolutely nuts. No self-control at all. Crunchwrap Supreme. Yep, he'll have one of those. Shredded chicken burrito. Why get one when you can have 3? Doritos Locos. How many you got?" Marla's father called the power company right away, and was told that they were getting a lot of activity that night, and were doing their best, but to expect a couple hours without power. "Shoot," said Marla's mom. "David, be a dear and get some candles from the kitchen. Bottom drawer by the oven. There should be some matches in there as well." It turned out to be a mistake, because, in the spirit of the night, she went right for the story about the llama spitting on me. However, after everyone had a good cackle over that one, she did end up getting into her groove, and I knew that she'd have the floor for a while. I looked around in the flickering candlelight for my fiancée, but she wasn't there. Marla hasn't come back yet. How long does it take to calm a llama down? "Oh, she'll be a while, dear," said Marla's mom. "I'm gonna go get her," I said, standing up on wobbly legs. I walked over to the large bay window and looked out into the night. "Does anybody have a raincoat I can borrow?" "Did you see it? Did you see it?" cried Marla's mom. "It's the weeping wisp. God help us." I am a rational person, but I'm also not one to deny what's right in front of my eyes. Suddenly, I was very much awake, and as frightened as I had ever been in my life. "Marla," I thought. "I have to find Marla." The thought of going outside where that thing was crawling was terrifying, so I didn't let myself think about it. I just focused on moving, towards the door. Just one foot in front of the other. But when I was halfway there, I heard that door open, and froze in my tracks. I couldn't see what was standing there, as the candlelight didn't reach that far, but I sure could smell it. It was the smell of death. It was the smell of the weeping wisp, oozing gore from its eye sockets, come to feed its insatiable hunger. Behind me, I heard the sounds of panic. Furniture was knocked around as people scrambled over each other. I turned and ran as fast as I could, towards the back door, struggling through the mass of bodies that were trying desperately to escape the weeping wisp. I wanted to help them, but more than anything, I needed to find Marla. Maybe it was too late. Maybe the weeping wisp had already got her, and was coming back for the bridesmaids. She's out there, somewhere, I told myself. Maybe she got away from it. I stumbled back outside and began looking around wildly, desperately, uselessly. Even with my phone's flashlight, I couldn't see very much on account of the driving rain. "Marla!" I screamed. "Marla!" I crawled over and began feeling the body in the darkness. It was a body I knew well. It was Marla. Here's what happened, as cobbled together from different accounts. There in the barn, Jake professed his love to Marla. She told him to get his shit together and sleep it off. He grabbed her and tried to kiss her. She kneed him in the groin and told him that if he left right then, she would forget it ever happened. He tried to grab her again, and she turned to run back to the house. But he caught up to her. Jake choked Marla on the grass outside the barn until she stopped struggling. When that happened, the realization of what he had just done came down like gravity on his head. He tried to get her up. But she wasn't breathing. He couldn't feel a pulse. Meanwhile, Mr. Floppy Ears was going wild in his pen. He managed to break out of it, and rushed at the man who had attacked his friend, spitting on Jake's face. Already out of his mind with panic, Jake started running. He tried to form a plan, as the rancid smell of llama spit circled around his brain, dancing with the horror of what he had just done. Meanwhile, Jake had reached the house himself, and had been pacing around the front door. Finally, he got up the courage to go inside and follow through with his plan. He opened the door, and that's when the repugnant odor of llama spit wafted in and reached the living room. Of all that happened, this is the worst part. Marla died. She saw, firsthand, what happens when we die. The horror of getting choked to death, she says, pales in comparison to the horror of what she experienced after she died. It's a pit, she said. That's all it is. It's an endless pit full of dead people. We're piled on top of each other. I dropped right on top of it all. Not a second later, somebody fell on top of me. 2 people die every second in this world, and that's where they all end up, good or bad. On top of the pile, for a moment. Then they start to get buried by the bodies of other dead people. I could picture the pit of dead bodies clearly in my mind. I could picture myself dropping down on top of it all. I could picture myself 100 years later, wedged in the middle of the pile now. Never able to do anything but think about how miserable I was, if I hadn't lost my mind. I hoped that there was at least that mercy, that maybe after a while you just stopped thinking and your mind was totally blank. I looked down at my lighter, which I had pulled out of my pocket without even realizing it. It was automatic.
You're still tuned to Horror Slop. Frequency unknown. Stories endless. Let's spin the next nightmare.
I'm Glad My Dad Drowned, by Lighting Nations. Even the principal laughed. And so, from that day forth, I was known only as Kermit. Thinking about her now, some 2 decades later, still gets me choked up. Unfortunately, my daughter's reached the age where she's become a mini KGB officer. Her non-stop questions are, mostly, a rapid-fire barrage of harmless nonsense. Have you ever ridden a hot air balloon, Daddy? What's your favorite color, hamster? But every so often, she'll ask an especially tricky one. Like, what's wrong with your hands? Or, how come I've only got 2 grandparents? When I asked Mom what she hoped to find out there, she'd say she couldn't really remember, only that it was big and gray. But lots of things are big and gray, I said. How would we know we found the right one? She closed her eyes, her expression all wistful. Because it'll feel wet and slimy. Dad never joined these hunts. He spent his days out on boats and his nights drinking in a little pub called the Harbor Inn, where he'd show off pictures of Mom and say, quite a catch, huh? Most nights he'd stagger home, completely pissed, sometime after 2 a.m., stinking of both fish guts and whiskey. Every so often he'd insist Mom go find a job to help earn some money, even though things never ended well. Because of her terrible memory, Mom either forgot to turn off an oven or return from her lunch break on time. She couldn't stomach criticism, either. Sooner or later, a coworker would remark about how she styled her hair or wore her makeup, then she'd quit on the spot. On Saturdays, my old man made me join him on fishing expeditions so he could teach me how to properly navigate waves. The two of us went out on this little rowboat with our fishing poles, and any time I made a catch he'd thump my back hard and say, "You're a chip off the old block." Although only in his 30s, a hard upbringing meant Dad looked much, much older. He also stood taller and broader than any other person in our sleepy village. Then he'd inevitably recount the story of how one day, while out fishing, a storm erupted out of nowhere, tossing him, his father, and their crewmates around until an especially violent wave made the ship's trawler snap. It whipped right around and took Grandpa's left leg clean off. "We made for that island and tried to clamp his wound," Dad would say, fighting back emotion, but it was already too late. One evening, at the dinner table, I worked up the nerve to say all this. "Well, fishing's boring and it makes your clothes all stinky." Mom shot me a look, silently advising I drop the subject. It was too late for that, though. "And you're away all the time," I said to Dad. "If it wasn't for our lessons, I don't think I'd remember what you look like." As suddenly as Dad's rage appeared, it evaporated. He released my arm and said, "We'll talk about this later." Alone with Mom, I said, "Sorry I made him mad, Mommy." Sometimes after midnight, a fierce argument erupted downstairs. I tiptoed to the top of the staircase to listen in. After a few minutes of stomping around the ground floor, my father's voice grew louder and angrier until there was a sudden thump. Everything went quiet after that. "Why would what you lost be all the way out here?" I asked one afternoon, as we picnicked on a grassy knoll overlooking the coast. "When I lose my marbles, they're always close by, like in my sock or under my bed." I bit into my fruit scone while Mom nibbled on her tuna sandwich. Unsure how to respond, I simply said, "I'm sorry, Mommy." "That's okay, darling. But unless I find what I lost, my memory's only going to get worse." "Then we better find it fast." That made her smile. The two of us off after gathering our things, her humming that soft tune. Dee, dee dee, dun da dee. "Nothing," I replied, keeping my eyes glued to the waves. The moment one of his giant hands clamped over my shoulder, a confession practically spewed out. My heart thudded wildly against my chest as it did. Dad may have been an expert fisherman, but he lacked the temperament for fatherhood, and Mom wasn't around to cool his temper. At that moment, it occurred to me she maybe only stayed with Dad so I wouldn't have to fend for myself. The wind died and the waves calmed while both of us sat in utter silence. Eventually, he said, "You did the right thing by telling me." Already there were tears in my eyes, no doubt because of my own sense of shame. I wiped them away and said, "Maybe if you gave back what you stole, Mommy would be so grateful she'd forgive you, and then she'd stop forgetting things." "No." Saying nothing, I bit my bottom lip and shook my head. "Good." He stared off into the horizon. "In any case, you needn't worry. That stupid woman could pull the village apart brick by brick and never find what she's looking for." On our next treasure hunt, I kept my lip buttoned about what Dad said. Me and Mom were having so much fun together, the thought of her leaving made me nauseous, and the idea of living with Pops, no mediator around to cool his temper, absolutely terrified me. One afternoon, as Mom sat on a stool in our back garden and stared at the ocean waves, I clasped her hand and said, "Is everything okay, Mommy?" She reared up in her seat, her face terribly pale. "Oh, it's you." "Yes, sweetheart, I think so." She let out a deep sigh, that flicker of recognition already fading. At that moment it became painfully clear we couldn't carry on like this. If we did, Mom would wither away. There was no choice other than to help her, whatever the consequences. On a treasure hunt. Pulling down the rest of the structure was bitter work. Soon there were blood blisters all over my hands. After tossing aside the final rock, I hoisted the sack onto my shoulder with a loud grunt and said, "Mom, I found it. Look." She sat motionless, as though hypnotized by a stage magician. I had no idea what her lost thing was or how it might help, plus now Dad was less than a few minutes away. When he got his hands on me, he'd be furious, so furious he might have to build another memorial. Better she leaves than stays like this. He clenched his jaw and stuck me in the left temple, which knocked me onto the wooden boards. I rolled from side to side, clutching my burning eye socket. At that moment, Dad was prepared to kill me. Better his family passed away in a freak boating accident than abandon him for being an asshole, right? The violent action snapped Mom out of her daze. She fumbled for words. Who said that? What happened? Where? Dad seized Mom's wrists before she could scoop it up. Still feeling every heartbeat along the left side of my face, I fumbled around, grabbed a paddle, bounced up, and then brought the end down across the back of Dad's head. His upper torso sprawled forward, into the boat. With barely any effort Dad wrestled away my oar, the boat tipping wildly to the port side. Salt water splashed over all three of us as he repeatedly struck me in the face, and then stars danced in front of my eyes. A column of white foam hissed into the air. It was followed by a sharp yelp. Then, gurgles. I rolled onto my stomach and peeked over the side, just in time to watch a stream of bubbles disappear. Quickly the water turned light pink. Then a gray skull, capped by a single dorsal fin, appeared beneath the surface. As two webbed hands reached out of the water and wrapped around the side of the boat, I scrambled away, fumbling wildly for a paddle or a rock, for anything to defend myself with. The creature's mouth widened, revealing countless rows of serrated teeth. It slowly raised a webbed hand, identical to mine in all ways except color. And then it made a series of liquid gurgles. Those sounds followed a simple pattern, dee, dee, dun da dee. I studied my hands. My stupid, ugly, webbed hands, the same ones that earned me the nickname Kermit. Mom. In the years since that fateful day, I've learned all about Selkies, a sea folk capable of shedding their skin to transform into beautiful women. Pop down to the local library, and you'll find countless fairy tales about cruel men stealing Selkies' skin to coerce them to stay on land and have children, ones who can be identified by their webbed hands. But Selkies aren't meant to live on land. Not permanently, at least. They either return to the sea or slowly wither away, like my mother. This year, she finally gets to meet her grandmother. I can hardly wait.
That last one tasted like fear and poor decisions. Let's see what the next bite stirs. Hope you're hungry.
Walmart, by Demon Stancialone. I don't shop at Walmart. That's not a brag. I don't look down on people who regularly have to out of financial necessity. I'm just saying, maybe if I did I would have noticed something sooner. It was late at night, and I was out a lot of essentials. I had just gotten off an all-day shift and tomorrow was looking to be no different. I was resigning myself to having no toilet paper, no soap, and no milk until my next day off. Then I remembered I was also out of lunch meat and just went, fuck it. No way I was braving the workday without my customary sandwich. The parking lot was almost empty. There were no carts loose in the lot, which was a first for any store I'd ever been to. I got out of my car and walked into the store. The first problem didn't even hit me until I was securely inside the building and probably would have driven any seasoned Wally Worlder scampering in the other direction. The sign had said Walmart. Not Walmart. My tired brain dismissed it as a reading comprehension error, instead of the first of many signs that something was very much wrong. The next weird thing presented itself when I actually examined one of the items. The thing was a 5-pack of pliers, but when I picked it up I found it was an empty package. The pliers behind the plastic were just pictures. I thought sure, it was probably just a security measure and I would have to bring it up to the cashier and they'd fetch the real one from a security case. Then I looked at the next one, a pack of forks. Same deal. I picked up a container of bleach. Empty. I had heard of rip-off stores before. Places like China, where they had fake Apple stores so good that even the employees didn't know who they were working for. But this was America. Why would they do something like that here, and to what end? Anyone who tried it would probably get sued into the ground by corporate lawyers before they could open their doors. I broke into a run. I stopped in my tracks, not sure what I'd just seen. The other customer caught sight of the clerk leaving and huffed and puffed, pushing their cart after the retreating specter. Time to find the doors. Wrong. I found the wall and walked along its surface. I made 5 perpendicular turns. 5 times I followed the wall exactly, no front door. I was starting to become really scared. A shaky voice came from an aisle cap behind me. I wasn't really ready to trust anyone in this place, but I thought it wouldn't hurt to answer. Oh, thank God, it was a lady's voice. I could hear the scrape of a cart dragging on the tile floor. I've been here for hours, my cell doesn't get any reception in here. Could you help me out? I seem to be lost. I'm sorry, this aisle appears to be capped here. It's just shelves on either side and then a dead end. I've tried. Maybe you can see something I'm missing. I hit the end of the aisle and got a cold chill. There was the aisle cap, extra wide. The aisles to either side were empty. Yes, do you see anything? I found the wall again and followed it, aggressively punching shelves. I scattered useless merchandise mock-ups to look for secret entrances. The space between aisles got longer. I would see an aisle cap 2, 3 aisles wide. I heard other people calling out. I started running along the wall, looking for seams. There were no checkout stands, no food court, nothing to indicate where the doors might be. It was a seamless cube of junk and I was running laps fruitlessly. Where's the door? I demanded. I had a horrible realization dawn on me. Like the double-sided clerk, this probably only had one purpose. I wasn't going to get anywhere with it, because there was literally nowhere to go. I went a little crazy then. I was hungry, tired, and desperate. I threw the greeter at the wall and it rippled like a condom full of jello. I could smell the sweet night air of freedom and started running. Good thing too, because the wall almost immediately started closing as I ran. Hit me on the elbow, hard. I had a bruise for days but I was out. The greeter wasn't so lucky. I could hear the squeals as the door pinched shut on it, but I didn't stop to look. I ran to my car and gunned it out of there. Here's the thing, I had been aimlessly driving around when I stumbled on the Walmart. I had been panicked as I fled from it. Now I had to admit I was completely lost. The officer eventually told me if I couldn't find the store, I would have to come back and file a report. I let them go and fled back to my apartment, swallowing down my guilt. I had let everyone trapped in that store down. I hoped that they could at least hang on until morning. I called in sick to my job and drove around, searching for the Walmart. I looked through every shopping center, strip mall, anywhere that even slightly resembled the place I'd gone last night. Finally, I found a donut place I remembered from that night, and from there I was able to retrace my route. I wound up at a big warehouse-type building with that familiar parking lot, all of last night's cars still in place. The building was empty. No sign, no shelves. Nothing.
Whew, that one gave me chills. But hey, we're just getting started. The next one's sharper. You'll see.
I was in a bus crash with 5 other passengers. After the crash, there were 6, by Robert Mort. I'd been trying to sleep. But between the guy snoring behind me, the jostling bumps, and the driver's radio, it wasn't gonna happen. 12 inches of snow expected, manhunt continues for Sterling inmate, here's the traffic report. Crunch. Oh, no. Yeah. I mean, we're all scratched up and stuff, but no one's seriously hurt. What time is it? A little before 3. No shit, we have a problem, the bearded guy snapped. We're stranded here, with no food or water, in the middle of a blizzard. All because you weren't paying attention. Hey, shut it. We all make mistakes. No one got hurt, Harry said next to me. Quiet, the driver screamed. And there was something in his voice, a note of panic, that set us all absolutely silent. What are you talking about? I stuttered. And then I saw it. Footprints in the snow. What if he's got a gun, smartass, the lip filler woman shot back. I don't want to die, the teenage girl sobbed. What is it? I asked, a weight sinking in my chest. I only scanned 6 tickets. 1, 2, 3, he mouthed, as he counted us again. There are 7 of you. But only 6, his face grew even paler. Oh, God, it's one of you. What the fuck? Silence. I think it's that guy, the lip filler woman said, pointing to the guy glued to his phone. He doesn't look hurt. Dude? Seriously? He looked up at us, and I could tell he was young, no more than 25. My thumb is fucked up. I can barely text. The teenage girl locked eyes with me. Then she lifted a shaking finger, and pointed it right at me. He was snoring behind me, the teenage boyfriend said, pointing at the bearded guy. It was really annoying. Silence. I looked at the 6 other passengers. Harry's my husband, so he's out. The teenage couple, they vouch for each other, don't they? Assuming the person isn't some memory-altering demon out of a horror movie. That left phone dude, bearded guy, and lip filler woman. 3 people. I looked at lip filler woman. Her face was weird. That was the only way to describe it. I'd assumed it was the plastic surgery, but maybe not. There was something off about her whole eye area. And her face remained mostly expressionless this entire time. I stared at her neck, looking for a seam. But in the dim lighting, I couldn't make anything out. Maybe we should just go into the woods, I whispered to Harry. Get away from everyone. You heard the driver. He said there might be more of them out there. But staying in here. It's 7 against 1. You can go out alone, if you want. But I'm staying here. I'm not going to. Well, I'm not going to die because of your stupidity. A lump. Just off the side of the road, at the border of the woods. Something about it caught my eye, even though, in the darkness and the snow, I couldn't make out any detail. It was like it didn't belong, like it clashed with the natural landscape. I narrowed my eyes, trying to parse what I was seeing. Had someone already left the bus? Gone out and come back? Was one of the passengers in on this whole thing? Guys, look. I pointed out the windshield. My head throbbed as my heart began to pound, and I felt lightheaded. Out there's a trail of blood, and something. It was wet. But the driver. His clothes were dry. Chaos erupted. I lunged for the door, but as soon as I stepped down, something yanked my arm back. My entire body jolted, my head screaming in pain. I whipped around to see the man, his fingers gripping me tight. "Run!" Harry shouted, locking eyes with me. "Run!" As we ran, though, I couldn't stop thinking about what I'd heard on the radio. While I'd been trying to sleep. Manhunt continues for Sterling inmate. Was that him? By the time the police arrived, all 3 men were gone. They haven't been found. I'd like to think they're alive somewhere. That in a few days, Harry will come home. But I know, deep down, that's not the case. The police did find the body of our real driver, though. At the end of the bloody footprints in the snow.
Need a break? Too bad. These stories don't wait, and neither do we. Next one's worse. In the best way.
The Special Knock, by the Clever Little Crow. My husband locked me in the spare bedroom hours ago. I was lying on the couch in the living room, reading, when he called out for me. I found him in the spare room, and when I walked in, he pushed past me and locked the door. "Repeat it, so I know you know it," he called. "Do the goddamn knock, Grace. Do not make a sound. I'm serious. I'll tell you when it's safe. I love you." I'd never heard him sound so aggressive. I repeated his knock, and then I heard him walk away. I paced the room. I was worried, but I trusted Jack. I sat by the door for a while hoping I'd hear something, but there was only silence. I looked out the window afterwards, but all I could see was the house next to ours, and not much else. I decided to take a nap to pass the time. I wasn't sure when Jack would be back, and I was getting restless. Eventually I fell asleep, and I dreamt that I was chained to the bed and that I was being watched. I woke up in a sweat. I was tempted to call out to Jack, but I could hear a noise. I walked over to the door slowly and could very clearly hear heavy breathing coming from right outside the door. I tried to look through the crack under the door and saw a dark shadow. Suddenly I could hear knocks on the door. It wasn't the same special knock that Jack had done. The knocks got louder and louder, and soon it sounded like someone slamming their whole body against the door. The knocks/slams eventually stopped, and the house again became silent other than my heavy breathing. I stood at the door ready with my lamp for what felt like eternity. Whoever was there unlocked the door. Then I heard the knock. Jack's special knock. "You can come out now, Grace." It didn't sound like Jack though. It sounded like someone mimicking Jack. "You can come out now, Grace." The voice yelled over and over, piercing my ears. And then again, the silence.
Sleeping yet? Didn't think so. Next story's up. And yeah, it's worse. You're welcome.
Love, Fuck, and Free. This is a story about the second one on my list, but the first one makes a guest appearance. I first saw her smoking a cigarette outside our college's art building, looking bored with life. "Suck your dick for a cigarette," she said. Or how she never slept. Whenever she'd stay the night after we'd fucked away the afternoon, she'd just lay in bed and stare at the ceiling. I'd wake up in the middle of the night to her staring at me full on in the face, an inscrutable look in her eyes that most resembled hunger. My conviction that there was something off about Marla only deepened when I found her driver's license. It had spilled out of her purse that she'd tossed carelessly on the table. "Marla, how oof." She shoved me hard, and soon I was on the table and she was on me. "Fucking." "Yes," she said, sliding her mouth back down my shaft until her lips reached the base. "I have things to do," she said cryptically. "Things?" she said flatly. "Do you want me to finish this or not?" The first place I followed Marla to was the bathroom. She went into the one-person handicap bathroom in the art building, and I heard the lock click behind her. Then through the door I heard the unmistakable sounds of vomiting, followed by a flush. Was Marla bulimic? It didn't seem to fit with the Marla I knew. I hid around the corner, then went inside to investigate after she'd left. She'd gotten most of it in the toilet, but around the rim there were tiny droplets of blood. Then Marla went to the hospital. I followed her as she visited dozens of patients, most of whom seemed to be at death's door. After each time she would find a deserted bathroom and vomit. Each time there would be little flecks of blood on the seat. I began to worry for her health. It didn't seem possible that anyone could vomit up that much blood and still be alive. Finally I followed Marla to a deserted alleyway. What the hell was she doing here? I thought. How did you know? I can smell you, dipstick. Smell me? What the hell are you talking about? I said. You smell like death, she said, staring at me hungrily. You're a sick son of a bitch. You're not making any sense. How am I the sicko? Ask your doctor. What do I care? What? You still don't get it. I'm feeding off your sickness. It's what I do. We parted ways after that, but something in my head kept nagging at me. What if I really was sick? I went to the doctor just to rule it out. When my blood tests came back I got an urgent call to make another appointment as soon as possible. I found out at that appointment that by all estimations I should have been dead 3 months ago. An MRI revealed that the cancer, a rare and aggressive form, had spread all throughout my body. Within a couple days I could no longer walk and barely sit up. I was done for. Most vampires steal life, she explained. I steal sickness. But I've got to get rid of the bad parts. That's where the vomit comes from. Oh. Marla says suck has 4, though.
And now, as the hour gets cold, and the shadows stretch long into the corners of your room, it's time.
Yeah. Chew the spooky violin. But seriously, this next one? Even I didn't sleep after hearing it.
I've claimed something coming from you.
What? Just because I sleep in a coffin and collect cursed dolls?
Among other things. This is the final descent for the night. One last story, dragged up from the depths of the disturbed and deranged.
Go ahead. Turn off the lights. We dare you.
This is Horror Slop.
I was hired pretty late in the process. I wasn't even sure what the contaminant was, as it was just designated as the contaminant. Apparently it was something that resided just under the top soil in a large residential area. To not taint our measurements, me and my colleagues were given minimum information about the symptoms to look for, and what to expect. Instead, we were provided a set of experiments and willing participants. It was all fast and haphazard. Most of us started on a Monday, and Tuesday the following week was the day of our first experiment. Little time to prepare, get settled, or even understand. Still, this could be big. Big enough to launch a career. And number X200B. The experiment, described as the Cognition and Ocular Development Assessment, CODA, was to be performed with full consent and supervision of the parental guardians. All children were between 6 to 10 years old, and none of them had any observed deformities or illnesses. We were given limited access to certain medical records to make sure our study didn't have the potential to cause any harm. Then again, I'd read the experiment checklist, and there was nothing that could damage anyone. If anything, I argued the results would be pretty much useless. As Tuesday came around, me and my 2 colleagues had prepared as best we could. The 3 of us would put 1 participant each through a series of tests. The CODA was 3 tests over a total of 3 hours. The parents were to be asked for consent before and after each step and given the ability to stop any test at any given time. The experiment overall was surprisingly simple. It was supposed to be a measurement of cognitive and emotional development, mostly tested through facial and spatial recognition. "Don't worry," I said. "We're mostly gonna look at pictures. Doesn't sound too bad, huh?" He shook his head, but I'd yet to see him smile. Maybe his mom's anxiety rubbed off on him. The first test was all about emotional intelligence. In sets of 6 pictures each, I was to show Logan various expressions and ask him which mostly correlated to an emotion. If they answered objectively wrong, according to a chart, we were supposed to ask them to explain their choice. Simple enough, I'd done something similar before. But this is where I first realized that Logan wasn't some ordinary kid. As I laid out the first image set, I asked him to identify the happiest face. Clearly, it was card number 3, and Logan answered as such without hesitation. In the second image set, he was asked which one was the saddest. Again, it was number 3. He answered correctly, again. "Which one is the angriest?" I asked. There was a correct answer, number 4. A woman furrowing her brow and exposing her teeth. Yet Logan looked at them all for a long time. "Number 6, he said finally, pointing at the sleeping man. "It's complicated. They almost killed his mom." "And number X200B?" He answered the rest of the questions flawlessly, but that answer stuck with me. Such a strange reaction. Not only did he answer wrong to an obvious question, but it was also such an odd explanation. Logan himself seemed to have trouble finding the right word for it. We pressed forward. First 3 cards, no problem. Happy, happy, sad. Easy explanations. Second set of cards, same result. Surprised, sad, sad. But when the third image set came along, I didn't know what to say. 3 people, all completely neutral. Not a single emotion on their face. They looked almost computer-generated. Logan didn't skip a beat though. "She's scared," he said. "She doesn't know why she's doing this." "And, what about this one?" "Oh, he's hungry. He just doesn't show it." "Yeah, he's really hungry. Dangerous." "Okay, he's. I think he's obscene." "Yeah, obscene." "What do you mean?" "So why is he, obscene?" And number X200B. And number X200B. We'll be done in a bit, I said. He's doing great. Does he have any trouble at school? No, not really, no, she smiled. Well, mostly not. Some of the other kids can get a bit creeped out when he starts making things up. All kids have a quirk or two, I smiled back. That's what makes them kids. And number X200B. The final experiment was about recognizing places rather than people. One by one, I was to show Logan pictures of various places. Ordinary places like supermarkets, playgrounds, and factories. They were pretty easy to recognize. First, I'd show him the pictures. Then, I'd ask him to describe the scene. Logan didn't seem to mind. The pictures themselves was easy for Logan to recognize. One by one, he explained what he saw. Factories with lots of cars parked outside. Empty playgrounds. But as we got to a park, he sort of stopped. His expression shifted. I had to stop myself from correcting him. It was obviously not a graveyard. Can you describe it? I asked. I was going off script, but I was just too curious. Logan leaned in to look closer at the picture. There's a lot of strange colors, he said. The people who used to be there are gone. And number X200B. Do you have any idea what he sees here? I asked. It's just strange, I said. Usually kids make up stories about dragons, lasers, wizards, that kind of stuff. Not graveyards in parks. Are you calling my son strange? I lost my train of thought. As Logan came back, she grabbed him by the arm as to leave. Before they did, I caught up to them. I had to try something. Logan, I said. Just a moment. They stopped, and his mom gave me a tired look. I didn't lie when I said I was thinking about buying that house. There was an open viewing the next day, and I decided to drop by on my lunch break. Everyone was gathered around the realtor in the living room. I don't know what gave me the courage to confront him, but I just blurted it out. Did the previous owner die here? I asked. In the foyer? No, they didn't, he answered. You have to tell us if they did, one of the couples said. Another couple agreed. There were loud sighs. A couple immediately left. Another left shortly afterwards. There was a queue to talk to the realtor, and within 10 minutes I was the only one left. I sort of gave up on it after a while. But as I was watching TV, the thought came creeping back to me. And it was. No question about it. She was ADR, from staring into the light too long. I could feel it, understand it. Over the next couple of days I started chasing Gald. The word meant someone whose feet was wet, despite not swimming. It took me a while to get this one, but I finally found it in a newspaper article online. I felt galled from reading about a man who had died from an overdose down at the beach. His body had apparently choked itself, causing him to sweat to death. As he was homeless and living close to the beach, he'd been found by a couple of teenagers building a sandcastle. But that feeling of drowning on dry land, next to the ocean, that was galled. With the right word, I could feel it. I could empathize. In my mind, I could be there with him. But the final word I'd noted, shrit, that was a difficult one. Over several days I looked all over the internet. I searched forums, read obscure articles ranging back to the 90s, but I just couldn't shoot blindly into the web and hope for the best. I had to find out more, get something substantial. That thought made me take a step back. What about the photos? The photos we had shown Logan in the first place. Who were the people in the photos? I took a few photos with my phone and tried to do an image search. I couldn't get a single hit. These pictures simply weren't available anywhere online. The ordinary emotions displayed could be found on various stock image sites, but not the strange ones that Logan pointed out. Finally, after a few hours and dozens of pages clicked through, I did find a picture that looked like one of the models, but in a completely different setting. The picture I found online was from a social media profile. The profile, in turn, portrayed the user page of the very same homeless man that had drowned in his own sweat from an overdose. The same one I'd read an article of. But the article was written just a few days prior, and the picture must have been taken at least weeks ago. Listen, I don't know if you can get this. What Logan did was to perfectly describe, using one of his made-up words, was exactly what was about to happen to that man. The man who overdosed on the beach. I mulled the whole thing over in my head countless times, and finally I just gave up. I had to talk to Logan again. And number X200B. I did the creepiest thing I've ever done. I tracked the kid down at his school. The following day, as he was about to get on the bus back home, I waved at him from across the parking lot. He was surprised to see me, and couldn't place me at first. Then I could see him recognize me, like something lit up in his mind. "Good," he said. "You're not here for more tests, are you?" "Actually, I'm just here to ask you about that language of yours. Those strange words you use. How do you come up with them?" "I think I always knew," he shrugged. It's weird, like listening. But not to a sound, but like a color. It's just sort of there. Inside. Well, sometimes those things are easier to see. You said I should answer fast, not, accurately. Sure, he smiled. Just stand still for a bit. "Athoes," I said. I didn't know why I said it, but it took Logan by surprise. "I don't know," I said. I'm sorry, Logan, I don't know why I said that. I want to say that I didn't. I want to say I saw nothing, but that'd be a lie. A million little words crept into my mind, and as I stared into that kid's eyes I saw something I shouldn't have. Now, it was all becoming clearer. The more words I knew, the better I understood. The word I'd looked for, Srit, was a lot more complex than Logan had made it out to be with human words. It was contextual. The man had died in an earthquake, he fell between the cracks. No, he hadn't. He was going to. It was describing events destined to unfold. But it was also describing something that had happened. Was it both? Neither. I see it, I admitted. Screaming to me that once you understand something, you can't unlearn it. I forgot to breathe, as to not accidentally say something I shouldn't. He didn't have to answer. I knew it was true. It was written into the word itself that my realization would come. Then, as possibilities came rushing towards me, I could feel an enormous weight come down on me. My mind couldn't take it. My body was shutting down as I fell to my knees, screaming. Screaming until my neck felt raw. The world started to fade, as my heartbeat swallowed my hearing. I have a hard time describing what happened next. When I closed my eyes, I'd see millions of possibilities. Mostly, pain, suffering, and terror. My own thoughts and emotions, multiplied like a torch in a hall of mirrors. I'd see myself waking up in my bed, only to get murdered by 1,000 different weapons. I'd see myself drowning in my bathtub, breaking my neck, falling down the stairs. Death. So much death. And then in the blink of an eye, I'd be in the back of an ambulance, feeling the residual effect of a defibrillator on my chest. As I blinked, the ambulance burst into flames. The driver crashed into a tree. Someone carving their initials into my chest with a scalpel. None of it was real, but I couldn't tell anymore. Different worlds, with nothing but a well-placed syllable. All the while, I was just spitting out seemingly random words. My eyes lost focus, and as I lost grip of reality, my body shut itself down in self-defense. This was back in January of 2019. But that's just the thing. To learn what it really means to be Obson, to be my word, I can't really do anything else but to live and see what happens. Not unless I want to go back to where my mind wandered off to. Still, sometimes I can feel something creeping back into my mind. Little tingles. Syllables and sounds, reminding me of all the knowledge I still have stored away somewhere in my inner madness. Little words with galactic proportions. It is so easy to slip back into that mind, just inches away from the edge of what my physical brain can hold. I sometimes wonder what they mean.
And there you have it, dear listeners. One final scream, echoing into the void.
Yeah. Void screams, eternal darkness, I get it. Can I eat now?
We're still on air, Roxy.
Oh no, just the spooky FCC is gonna haunt us for breaking the mood.
If you enjoyed tonight's descent into depravity, don't forget to like, subscribe, and what does he always say?
Stab that bell icon like it's your ex possessed by a demon, and leave a comment telling us what story made you question. I have choices.
And if you survive the night, we'll be waiting.
Same dat time, same that crypt.
You're the reason we have complaints, you know that.
You're welcome.